All right, this time I'm going to sit here and we're going to make sure my audio is running and going good before I go off on a tangent and a discussion spree. On my streaming software, it looks like it's up and running. My microphone looks like it's peeking out. So we should be good. All right, so couple different things. Saw this new paper posted. Well, it's not a new paper, actually. This was posted in 2019. But I'm still making my way through a lot of Michael McCulloch's research. And he's over at the University of Plymouth in the UK. And Plymouth University right here. And he's basically on the British team for all this kind of research and propulsion research. Propulsion community is a pretty small community of scientists, but there's quite a number of people that have done some amazing work in this community that's not really well recognized or not being widely recognized by the greater physics community. And in part because some of it could turn a lot of present-day theories on their heads, like, for example, this theory, it shows how to predict galaxy rotation without the need for dark matter, that the dark matter that they insert into the equations to make everything work cosmologically. Dark matter is not real. It's not observed. It's not there. They keep getting millions and millions and hundreds of millions of dollars in funding to look for this dark matter. They haven't found it, and it's just these old antiquated models that predict the dark matter are wrong and need to be thrown out in the garbage. And they're being clung to by this mainstream academia, kind of like the Piltdown man's skull, or the plate tectonics. How an example of a scientific revolution that was fought by the establishment because they're a bunch of dickheads. Not any other reason, really. But yeah, it's pretty crazy what's been going on with him and the posts that he's been getting, the resistance he's been getting from the mainstream academic community to some of these new theories, and some of these new physics showing, how to get and I wouldn't call it anti-gravity. It's really hard to say that, but it's basically what is gravity, and he's answering that question about what gravity really is. According to him, he made a tweet. He made another tweet just another couple days ago, which I thought was awesome too. And that tweet said, I don't have to look it up. I can remember it. He said that gravity is blocking of information by horizons. So anytime information gets blocked in the flow of information, which is photons, anytime these photons get blocked by something, that's gravity. Gravity's created there, and gravity happens there. And my response to that was, well, if that's what gravity is, it's this blocking of information by these horizons. Could you get these horizons to break down so that they weren't horizons anymore, and that the information flowed freely across these, so you didn't break the information loops in the code or whatever? Like, this is the idea that I've been talking about with this warp drive for quite a while now. And the answer is yes, and it's in a lot of these. A lot of the physics is in these papers, which is really amazing to discover a lot of stuff about Rindler coordinates and Rindler horizons, and how to basically manipulate these with spinning masses to create a warping of the effect, to hide mass through this effect, which would be awesome, because this finally explains kind of like how that Mercury plasma drive works. That I've always been looking at, how could the physics of this spinning Mercury plasma drive work? We have so many references throughout history talking about this Mercury plasma drive. We have the Nazi Die Glock, the Nazi Bell stuff. basically this whole other theory that goes into a whole another rabbit hole that I'm not going to really get into right now. I was going off on that in the first stream, and I was like, I probably shouldn't have gone there. And I'm glad that that I got to do this over, because we don't quite get buried in some of this stuff. But basically, there's 3 examples that I can think of historical references to craft that operate, flying machines that operate on this rotating Mercury. The earliest goes back to the Vimanika Shastra, which is an ancient Indian text, which was it was revealed. The existence of the text was revealed in 1952, but it was allegedly, written in the 1866 to 1940 by this scribe who dictated it from these channeling sessions, apparently. So it came from channeling. Doesn't have any like real sources to this, that these were actually anything real. But one of the things that was interesting is that it talked about several flying craft that were developed by these ancient cultures or ancient peoples that used to live on the earth a long, long time ago. But one of these craft was it worked by rotating the liquid metal. A rotating liquid metal, and that's the first mention of this of any kind of craft that's related to rotating liquid metal. Then we have this Nazi Bell, or the Glock, which kind of came out in 2000 with this author Igor Witkowski, and it was later popularized by Nick Cook, who I don't exactly trust everything about him because of his past affiliations over in the UK. And who he might still be working for. But I've always had thrown this whole idea in the kind of almost in the debunk bin to a certain extent. But now that we have some kind of actual physics, mainly because the torsion field physics didn't pan out to be a convincing explanation, and that that wasn't a lot of experimentation with this, and not a lot of evidence for whether this was actually something being done. There's lots of mercury around. It's easy to get mercury. That people are throwing it away and paying companies to take it from them and dispose of it for them. So it's the other idea that is that it's a certain element or isotope of mercury. All right, so there's this idea that it was called red mercury. It wasn't regular mercury. It was called red mercury. But red mercury, when you look up red mercury, it's actually this crystal. Oh, here it is. It does. It says it's purportedly a substance of uncertain composition used in the creation of nuclear weapons, as a variety of unrelated weapon systems. But because of the great secrecy developing. Yeah, red mercury. This is some cool stuff. So if you guys have ever heard of this, but it's the idea that they basically taken all the certain isotope out of all the mercury that has this isotope, and that's what I believe. If red mercury is like such a thing, and there is a secrecy about it, it's got to be like a certain isotope of mercury that they're using to do this, which would kind of make sense. Also, if you go back to Ed Fouché's original story about the mercury plasma drive, and it actually talks about a TR-3B. So Ed Fouché came forward in 1998. I forgot I mentioned this in the earlier stream, but I hadn't mentioned it in this one. So he came forward in 1998 at this UFO conference and basically spilled the beans on all this kind of stuff. Was one of the first people to talk about like quasicrystals. Metamaterials, there was some other vague mentions of this, but metamaterials have really turned out to be more of the optical stuff. Quasicrystals have shown some great potential with optical materials as well, and photonic crystals, which is quite interesting that he would have talked about these things in 1998, having come from working at Area 51 on classified programs. And to say that about that stuff about quasicrystals and metamaterials in combination with this thing about this TR-3B flying triangle, I've been basically hooked on this story, ever since for the past 15 years since I first got into this and saw this. I heard about this through I was researching stuff on gravity, and I watched this video called "The Case for Antigravity." and it's from 2005. And you can go watch it. And at the end, very end of the video, he briefly mentions, the quasi-crystals and metamaterials and this Mercury plasma drive engine and the TR3B. And that's how led me to Ed Fouché. Got in touch with Ed Fouché, got a hold of him, went and sent away for the actual conference where he gave his original presentation. Got the whole tape of it, the full presentation, and I posted those online years ago. Kind of really dug through the case. Ed was a big player on my forum years ago. We did a lot of investigations, including a deep investigation about 15 years ago into Bob Lazar, where we really dug into the Bob Lazar case from a lot of angles. One of the things that Ed said is that, he said, whenever I walked around on that base, I had to wear these foggles, these goggles that, I couldn't see. And Bob never talked about the foggles. That's how I know he's lying. He never, Ed would always say, Bob's never worked out at that base because he was walking around and he never mentioned anything about these foggles. And Ed was one of the only people to mention these foggles, and I thought he was crazy and everything the whole time. But then the drive.com recently posted a whole thing on this too. So visitors to Area 51 have to wear foggles, and it came out and was confirmed, and they actually got pictures of the things that they have to wear. I think the ones that Ed described were a little bit more robust than these, but than these ones shown. But hey, it's a real thing, and it was in one of the many interesting points that were brought up during all these discussions and debates and stuff. And then me and Ed used to get drunk all the time, and he was a bad alcoholic towards the end of his life, and God bless his soul. But we got in a lot of fights over a lot of stuff, and then I put a video out. I put a video out with him, and it was basically he was basically saying that I made the whole story up, and and I posted that video, but really he was just fucking, he said so much shit when he was drunk. It's like that was just one thing he said, and I posted the video up, showing people that he admitted to lying. But really, just does that prove he's lying? No, it doesn't, and it doesn't take away from all the other stuff he said that we can't explain, like how he talked about metamaterials and quasi-crystals, and this Mercury plasma drive engine and this craft that the U.S. Air Force supposedly had. So, and then he wrote me an email, scaring me and pretending to be this NSA agent and all this stuff, and fucking with me. But it's kind of, I don't know, this weird perspective on everything that happened, and my, how I look at it now. I don't really know. It's like I always think about this. I always feel like Ed's alive out there and he's going to call me on the phone or something. But yeah, here's the full. So you can go in there and learn about the Ed Fouché whole thing and that I was involved in. But now I'm more involved in the physics and the research, and one of the that's why I've always kind of been involved in the physics and the research into this. This kind of led me to the Podkletnov stuff, because it was, oh hey, this rotating thing that's super cool. That sounds like this other Podkletnov experiment, with the rotating superconductors, and a lot of the research that was done related to that, and you'll find Project Grasp by Boeing. There were several NASA studies and replications. But yeah, there's a whole article about this in 1998 from Wired, talking about these rotating Mercury, these rotating Bose-Einstein condensate disks, and these condensed matter spin states and all this stuff. But yeah, I had found all this stuff, and even Eugene, in a recent email to Tim Ventura of American Antigravity, he talks about the Nazi Bell stuff. He says that, oh yeah, this was all developed in Germany under these scientists, the Nazi scientists, who then brought all this technology to the U.S. under Operation Paperclip, and that basically this faction of NASA and this faction of Nazi scientists at NASA have held on to this like secret Wunderwaffe technology, and it's been part of this sort of secret space program for the last 50, 60, 70 years, according to some of these theorists out there. And I don't know how much of that I believe or how close they got. It would certainly be worthwhile to build, to find, this red mercury, if it or whatever this stuff is. It almost seems like another unobtainium. You can't like identify exactly what this is, and is it regular mercury? Is it red mercury? Is it what Ed Fouché said? It's mercury doped with barium, calcium, and lead or something. Barium, calcium, and lead. Or is it one of these other things? Is it not even mercury at all? Is it something else? Maybe they just call it mercury because it's a quicksilver. Maybe it's gallium, so yes, so that's the other thing too, man. Ed was not the scientist, and then that whole thing that happened with the TV show that we were basically he was trying to get himself on that TV show towards the end of his life, and then he called me up and was asking me all the problems that I had pointed out, because I had analyzed the shit out of his whole engine with the physics stuff, and I was giving him all this information about, all the things I found wrong with his physics model, and then I realized he was like changing a little bit of the stuff to kind of make a new story up that he told on that TV program, and I was like, what the hell is going on there, So Ed's kind of this kind of guy, right? And it makes me kind of think that, yeah, Ed Fouché, he definitely got the document. There was that issue with the document. And he had put this document out and he had edited it because he was afraid of releasing the original document, he said later on, and he wanted to edit parts out to make it. But then it made him look even more suspicious because David Hilton had found the proof of him editing the document, and brought it to our attention, and then that caused a whole controversy. Is like, is this real documents? And then he ended up sending me all these other documents which didn't show those watermarks and all that stuff, and these ones were all changed, so that's not his real social security number and stuff. So there's a lot of things that were done to hide his actual personal information, for just for his own security, but so maybe now that he's dead, some of that stuff can kind of work its way out, or whatever, as his real social and stuff. But none of that's the real important stuff. The real important stuff is how he got this information. He obviously worked at Area 51 and did, he was a flight test guy on the F-15 and stuff. I don't have any confirmation. He knew some SR-71 pilots, and he says some of these SR-71 pilots that he talked to flew this TR-3B. He said that's how he found out about the TR-3B, was through some of these SR-71 pilots who said they flew the thing. Now, those could have been stories that he'd heard. A lot of it is all secondhand information and stuff, so you have to kind of like take it with a grain of salt. But hey, it's still now it's third-hand information because you're getting it from me. And you're relying on my memory and another, intermediary. But exactly, where he got this information from is still kind of a question, because he had these characters in the book Alien Rapture that kind of were these players that told him the information, Gerald and a couple of these other guys, and I think they were adapted from several other people. They weren't actually one person. They might have been a combination of different sources and different people and stuff. But I almost thought for sure, and that, I believe Ed Fouché has a whole thing written down for me where he has all the names of who the people really are. And I thought it was interesting that Gerald is actually Harold. At least that's what that's what Ed told me. I think Dan doesn't agree. I want to get Dan on to give his input on this, because I think Ed told Dan different things. But we know that Ed knew Hal Puthoff, and it's almost assuredly where Ed got a lot of the stuff about quasi-crystals and metamaterials, because who the hell else did Ed know that was working on that kind of stuff? You know what I mean? It had to have almost come from Hal, so I don't know. But so it gets a whole wrapped up in that. But anyways, I really like the work that this physicist Mike McCulloch's doing. His website's called quantizedinertia.com. He's got a whole bunch of his papers up there, including this one, which I posted. And this is some real interesting physics that gets rid of dark matter and kind of gives us space drives that can get us off this planet, which we need. And anyone who fucking doesn't think we need space drives or wants to talk shit about new ideas which can give us space drives, really should go to fucking hell and get blasted. We need to really screenshot and capture everyone who talks shit about this idea and resists it when it comes out. I think we need to really pay attention to who those fucking people are, and maybe even we'll go and take their fucking DNA after they're done, so we can see if they're fucking space aliens purposely holding our fucking civilization back from advancement. Because why else the fuck would you do that? Other than the fact that, a lot of these academics and scientific institutions have done this notoriously throughout history. Is it just stupid? I'm having this debate with a lot of people, and it seems to be winning that it's just human stupidity and our own arrogance and ego. It's not that, we're being controlled or misled by, shape-shifting reptilians posing as humans and academic college professors in order to mislead our entire, academic institutions. But, all right, we got some callers coming in. We got Mark here. What's up, dude?
Oh, are you live already?
I am live right now. I tried to go live first, and then my audio glitched and it wasn't working. And now I have the audio working. So I just want to try to make sure that I got yours is working, coming through. Say something.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, it looks like it's coming through. Good.
Cool.
All right.
Well, so yesterday we had some trouble with the audio.
I've got a little conference call speaker I can plug in if that helps. Does it sound okay, or let me get the speaker out?
I think it sounds good. I can hear you. I don't.
So anyways, we're here in Huntsville. And
yes, Huntsville. That's where all the Operation Paperclip scientists were brought to, right?
Yeah, that's basically where they won the space race.
Yeah, we won the space race in Alabama. You're welcome from a bunch of rednecks.
Can you hear us better now?
Yeah, I just plugged the speaker in. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm getting.
We can hear you fine. I think everyone can hear you. We can hear all three. Yes, everyone can hear us. Yeah. So you guys tried to call in yesterday from the road, and we had a little audio problem. I could hear you fine, but on the playback, and everyone else couldn't hear a word you're saying, and that kind of audio glitch bled through this to earlier today when I tried to do my stream. It's weird. The ports on my computer go funky, and I have to switch them to another port on my computer, and then it work. Then the things work. I'm almost blaming my motherboard rather than thinking that it's the secret space program hacking into my computer. But I don't
know. Amy's found some crazy hacking stuff that happened to her. Literally, they went into the motherboard of the computer, and
the hidden partition in the hard drive.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Amy's done some serious hacking and discovered a lot of shit inside of her computer, nation state shit.
If you know what an EFI file is, it's basically like a OS file. And they set up a hidden partition on my hard drive and put a fake OS in there. They set the hidden partition to be the preferred folder to grab updates from. So it every time my computer updates, I'm in fake admin, fake root, and it updates from this malicious hidden partition. If you reformat the drive and reinstall the OS, it pulls the same fake OS from the hidden partition every time. I bought a new laptop, I locked it down, I hired a new security company and locked it down, and they immediately got back in it within a couple days. the new locked down laptop.
Wow.
Interesting. So I'm interested in why they're after, that, but I want to know, like, what you know about, I don't know, we're kind of like, I don't want to say too much, but I want to like answer some of these people's questions about,
who is this girl?
Yeah, who is this person? Why don't you introduce yourself and kind of
okay.
And tell us.
Let's not get too much into the details, but so I'm the president of this thing called the Institute. Which institute? The Institute. So we're a publicly we're a public benefit corporation. So it's kind of like a weird blend between like a nonprofit and a C corp. We're a for-profit C corp, but we have like a public benefit mission. And our public benefit mission is basically to accelerate the rate of innovation happening that needs to occur for us to really be persistently in space. We kind of go up into Earth orbit and we pretend like we're in space, but we're not really in space. And so there's really a number of paradigm shifts across really a wide variety of industries. I'm not talking about one propulsion paradigm shift. I'm talking like we need new material science, we need chemistry innovations, we need energy production and energy storage, and life science. Like once we get to space, how are we going to survive there? What are we going to eat? What are we going to breathe?
Yeah, consider that like Earth is probably a gem. We don't know what's really out there that is habitable. Like you don't want to live on the moon. You don't want to live on Mars. You want to live on a comfortable place.
Yeah. So the Institute's mission is really to accelerate innovation to achieve that goal, because honestly, we're lagging just pathetically behind where we should be technologically, not just as a nation, but as a planet right now. We're at least 50 years behind where we should be, if not 100. It's really bad. I believe that hardware innovation and basic science innovation has basically stagnated over the past 50, 60 years. And so anyway, the Institute is a new financial platform to accelerate the rate of innovation, and we do that by lowering risk. So we're an institute. We do primary basic research as sort of an academic institution, but then we have, because we're a for-profit company, we can own equity in spin-out companies. So what we do is we mature a exotic technology, mature it in the Institute, and then we spin it out when it's ready to approach a commercial market. We spin it out into a standalone company.
You have one for sale right now, the plasma thrusters, right?
Yeah. So we have a few different companies right now that approach different industry problems, and the idea is to take an innovative technology that you need ultimately for space, but like it's really hard to develop a space technology that the customer isn't going to exist for another 5 years or whatever. It's hard to fund stuff like that because it's really expensive, and
you need a finished product.
The profits are so delayed, right? So what we do is we take those technologies we need ultimately for space, and we apply them first to much simpler or earthborne problem sets in current industries that have paying customers. And that way you can mature the technology and make money at the same time, solving problems on Earth, but then you can reinvest your profits back into the space application, which is more complicated, takes longer to develop.
I think Sky is basically doing that same concept with the power production. He's trying to go for explosion engines, which are extremely high power efficiency, and moving on to thorium reactors, which are a great power source. So ultimately, we need paradigm shifts in all of these industries in order to really become spacefaring civilization.
Including a paradigm shift in how we fund these things, right? Because I was just saying it's really hard. If you're a space startup and your customer isn't going to exist for another 5 years, it's really hard to get investment for that. But if you have a immediate application in like the oil and gas industry or water purification systems
or a new dating app.
Well, not a new dating app.
Well, there's a lot of people who would spend tons of money on that stuff. Software is king. And
Software is king.
that killed
So
innovation.
how do we take like program like all this propulsion technology which is locked up in these SAPs and stuff, and then try to like get that out by applying it to some other industry that we can use it for, and kind of like slowly get some technology out through this? Is that
Yeah,
kind
I
of
mean, like, here's an example that I'm publicly willing to talk about. So we have a neutron generator technology.
Oh yeah.
We have a neutron scientist on the team who has a very long history with like Los Alamos and Berkeley, and he's worked with all those people for the past 45 years in neutron science. And this neutron generator would be great for space applications. There's a lot of stuff you could do with it in space that would be useful.
Like you come up on an asteroid, you can hit it with the neutrons and find out what's inside it.
Yeah, what's the asteroid composition and that kind of thing.
For mining.
But you can also use it to like detect chlorine in oil, crude oil flowing through a pipeline here on Earth, because crude oil has chlorine in it, and it has very dynamically fluctuating concentrations of chlorine, and it like wrecks all their equipment all the time if there's too much chlorine in the pipeline coming down the pipe, and the factory on the other side of the pipeline doesn't know it's hugely burdened with chlorine. They're not ready for it, and it does like billions of dollars worth of damage. So we can create a platform now and mature the technology further.
That's eventually going to be used for space mining the asteroid belt.
Yeah, so it lets you get earlier profit streams going so you can actually sustain the space program. A big problem with the space program is that it's expensive and the profits are not immediate. So you got to find another profit stream to fund the whole thing. So that's sort of the financial innovation of the Institute. But then also it's a portfolio play too, right? Because the Institute is a parent company that owns a bunch of spinouts. So you can reduce your risk in, innovative technologies are often risky.
Mm-hmm.
You can reduce your risk by spreading your investment across like 5 or 6 different companies, and then you only need one of them to do well to pay for your investment.
Mm-hmm.
So we expect to be adding, we've got a couple companies now. We expect to be doing 5 or 6 new companies a year, probably. Different technologies for different industries that all ultimately lead to space with early profits to fund the whole thing. That's what I do. Our website is institutehsv.com. HSV for Huntsville, because we're located here. He's stealing my whiskey.
There's only one cup.
There is only one. Well, you can drink my whiskey. It's okay. We're here in Huntsville, Alabama, which is really the best place in the world. Honestly, the best place in the world to develop paradigm shifts like this. We're a whole city that was, we went from a cotton farming town. We used to grow watercress agriculturally, and then von Braun came to town, and hot damn, we remodeled ourselves around the single goal of going to space. So it's this weird, like, oh, your daddy's a rocket scientist, so is mine, join the club. It's like a joke almost. You go to a party and it's like, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm an aerospace engineer. Big surprise. It's just
in a couple of years, it's going to be like that for the new space race, which is going to be a worldwide thing.
Well, this is an interesting thing because I've talked to quite a few people about this. Why did Trump create a space force? Why? What would be the point of that? And then someone's like, oh, it's just this trumped up, the Star Wars SDI program that was created under Reagan. All this kind of technologies kind of existed, and kind of these programs have been ongoing since, for a while now. That's what this is inside. This is information that I got from a guy who is pretty much inside, high up in the Navy. I asked about it, and he's just like, oh, they think it's like a political move. They're
yes.
They're not aware of like these deeper implications that maybe there is a technology, another space race for this technology to develop this technology. It's almost like, and I would say almost on par with like the Manhattan Project, although it's not like it's crucial to a war effort. But
Yes.
it's almost like what they did in the Manhattan Project, where they set up, they basically took this town of Los Alamos, this desert place out in the middle of the desert that was as far away from people as they could find, and built a town there that eventually turned into a city, which is present day Los Alamos, which is a lot like Huntsville, where everyone's daddy's a physicist there in this whole town. So.
Well, it's interesting how the paper clippers ended up in Huntsville, because they came over here to the U.S. after the war, of course, and all the different senators and congressmen from the different states were sort of like bidding and fighting basically over where these German scientists going to go, specifically whose home state are they going to end up in, because whoever's home state gets the paper clippers, they're going to get a lot of government funding and infrastructure that's going to benefit their state economically, right? So they were fighting over it. And the paper clippers, the von Braun team, ended up originally in, I think it was Los Alamos. They were out there in the desert, basically on a base out there, and the Germans hated it. They hated it because it was hot and dry. And they were like, dang, I'm dehydrated. Look, I'm from the mountains of Germany. I'm dehydrated. It's really hot here. I'm sweating. And so the Germans basically like protested, and they were like, we're going to go on strike if you don't send us somewhere that's green with trees and mountains. And please, God, we need some humidity in the air because we're drying up over here. So they literally were complaining about the humidity. So the guy from Tennessee and the guy from Alabama were arguing over who got them, and there was also this big wind tunnel that came over from Germany. At the time, it was the biggest wind tunnel, in the world that had ever been built, and really that was what everybody wanted. They were fighting over the wind tunnel, and it ended up going to Tennessee, to the Space Institute around UT Martin in Tennessee. And
you guys got von Braun.
We got von Braun here in Huntsville, Alabama, literally as the consolation prize for losing the losing the wind tunnel bid. And Alabama has trees and is green and has 100% humidity. So the Germans were happy with that, so they ended up here. So it's weird, the little stories that you can hear around here about how the space race really happened. And it's really, it was really an example of like a coming together of old enemies, which is also a very, very interesting perspective to think about it from, because, I've heard stories about, during the first space race, they would have like a dinner or a party or whatever. They're standing there drinking wine, and one scientist says to the other, my brother died in a secret mission behind enemy lines, flying over there
to kill you.
To kill you. My brother died in an attempt to assassinate you, and here we are, working together as colleagues
to go to the moon. In the U.S. and freaking Alabama, and we're drinking wine together right now. Right now it's just whiskey, though.
Right now it's whiskey for us. But you had people that were shooting at each other just a couple years before, shooting at each other, and their brethren were dying to kill your brethren. And then they were here in the South as colleagues, attending, sitting at conference room tables next to each other and going out to lunch and going to the same parties.
Can I just ask, do you believe the rumors that that this Wunderwaffe technology, that this Nazi bell was a real thing? Because it says it's a hoax, and there's a lot of a lot of controversy and suspicion around that. Do you think that there's a possibility that's a real thing, and that there was some of these scientists were maybe working on that or brought that technology to NASA with them?
We're talking about 1946, right?
Yes.
1945?
Germany most definitely had advanced technology that maybe should have won them World War II, but it got flubbed. Like they really did have some really cool shit that maybe should have made the outcome different for them of the war.
If they started the war maybe a year or two later, they would have won.
Well, just because they did have advanced propulsion that is
they
not
were ahead of us the
widely
entire
recognized.
time.
Yeah,
they ran out of people.
but we had a really cool bomb that we dropped on them. Like, just because they had things that could fly around, maybe, if they,
We,
nuclear technology is still kind of a good way to one up somebody.
that's true.
They didn't necessarily have a nuclear bomb just because they had cool UFOs, you know. So
No,
they
but
lost.
actually, what happened with the
Yeah.
with the Nazi scientists is they broke off from Nazi Germany and funded their own civilization. This is according to ufology, sagas and stuff. And the SSP apparently found Nazi civilizations or German civilizations, they're no longer Nazis, living on other planets in the Milky Way when they flew away with their technology. But there, and there's Admiral Byrd, who went down to Antarctica and found their base there. And
The Germans very likely had a really cool base in Antarctica. I do not know the extent of it, how cool it was. They most certainly they probably had a base down there with some cool stuff in it.
Stargate talks about some advanced ancient technology that existed in Antarctica.
Yeah.
I think Stargate is a bit of a disclosure TV show that it's feeding you some real information along with some fake information. In fact, the way Stargate talks about anti-gravity is it talks about it as a more of inertial mass or dampening effect. You're just changing the amount of mass in an object versus actually appelling gravity. Which is a different concept than Star Trek and Star Wars. They all have different concepts about what's going on.
So this is like idea, like quantum theory was developed by a lot, by a lot of German people. Einstein, not Einstein didn't really develop quantum theory, but relativity. There's all these changes that kind of happen around turn of the century were kind of developed by a lot of not a lot of German theorists, and it's interesting that like the people are talking about, well, this would imply like if the Nazis came over with this technology and this was real and it was a secret, then it would imply like a whole different kind of set of physics that these people know and use that's different than the whatever the mainstream physics. And there's almost like there's a theory that there's a conspiracy within mainstream physics that Einstein was promoted as like because his theories kind of showed provable parts of this, but hid other parts or something. Like
I don't know. If you wanted to make sure that people believed the misinformation, giving the guy a Nobel Prize might be a pretty good way to give him some credibility so that people believe him.
Well, he did get a little bit of the math right.
Yeah.
But
he had a lot of help with the math, though. From what I know is like because
maybe some other people got that right, and he just put it forward.
Because he worked closely with a lot of these guys like Lorentz and the Lorentz transformation.
So,
and
what makes even more sense is that what he got right was the fact that light would bend because of gravity.
Right, the whole general theory of relativity, but it was based on this whole tensor math approach. That's like this approach as far as tensors.
Just boiled down to the same thing that Newton had, minus this other little this other little bit that explained Mercury's perihelion precession, which is basically how two objects that are close in on each other spin around, how their perihelions change. So it
also kind of like compares, like you couldn't tell the difference between centripetal acceleration or being in a gravitational field or being accelerated around rotated around at a high in a circle in a centrifuge. Basically, the acceleration that you'd experience, it would be indistinguishable if you didn't have outside perspectives on everything, which is true. But he doesn't explain what gravity is, what inertia is, and where gravity comes from, or what it really is. It just says that this like kind of warping of like the presence of mass warp space. And
Tesla didn't like that much.
Yeah, so it is kind of a simplified version, which gets correct results, makes accurate predictions and stuff, but it leaves so much out of like what's really going on. It doesn't answer like fully all the questions and stuff. But I'm wondering if there was ever actually someone who figured out better physics or a different set of physics, or if where we're at with this, because it's kind of like this debate I have going in my head. Is it's really like that there's this other set of physics that people don't know, or is it that are just we haven't figured it out yet, and we're slowly figuring it out. So that's where
I
I'm
want
at
to
with it.
comment on that just super briefly and pretty vaguely. Um, some of physics is right, some of it is wrong, some of it on purpose, some of it not on purpose, and then some of it is just straight up incomplete.
Right.
Other stuff out there that is not known, and it's not like a totally different set of physics. It's compatible with what we know if you leave out certain parts of what we think are right and are actually wrong. Physics is incomplete.
There's a lot
Then
of disinformation going on in physics. In fact, in all sciences, because like if you learn engineering, you're taught that one word means one thing, and if you were taught biology, if you're taught physics, you're taught the same word means something else. So you have two different scientists who can't talk to each other.
yeah,
Science should be interdisciplinary. You should be able to connect everything together.
Well,
because ultimately it's all happening on a quantum level, and everything is interconnected.
so
yeah, so the compartmentalization of fields and each academic field sort of being an ivory tower in its own like silo is really sort of, like you said, problematic for putting the whole picture together. A really great example would be chemistry versus electrical engineering and how we talk about current. I have a chemistry degree from UAH, and we learned that current is the flow of electrons,
Yeah.
and flow of electrons this way. But when you're in electrical engineering at UAH, you learn that current is the flow of holes in the opposite direction. And what is a hole? A hole is the absence of an electron, and it moves backwards from the direction that the electron is moving in. A hole is the place that the electron just left. Why do we calculate current differently such that we can't even talk to each other about something as fundamental as current? It's crazy. It impedes having useful conversations because, like you said, we're using different vocabulary for the same freaking thing.
We were having an argument the other day about magnetic moment. Two different concepts of what a magnetic moment is because we're studying different fields.
So,
or just didn't understand it.
Just using different words for the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
The other question I have about like the whole thing with these Operation Paperclip or these theories that they've had, the Nazis brought it over and they've kind of had it since the 40s or
but
the 50s or whatever. What is it? And question is why has my other question is why has DARPA and Boeing and all these other aerospace companies, why did they fund Project Grasp, or why did they do all these other why do they still continue to fund all these different research projects if they've already figured it out, or if they've already like kind of understood this?
When I say what is it, I'm kind of leading into what I said earlier about how, being persistently in space really is going to require multiple paradigm shifts. And so what I kind of mean by what is it, though, what did they figure out? What did they know? There's multiple things that are not publicly known. There's multiple effects that are not publicly known. And so what it did the Germans have that they gave to the secret space program?
Right.
They may have given them something. Doesn't mean they have everything there is to know.
There's good evidence also that the Nazis got their information from a gray extraterrestrial race that basically wanted to control them.
There's evidence of that?
Advanced technology, but that doesn't mean that they had.
I thought they got it from the Thule, like
that's out there that isn't publicly known.
Hitler did all this research into, like, he created that Thule Society, and he was researching all that. The
pictures showing a gray alien standing next to some high-level Nazi officials. And to be honest, it makes perfect sense. Like, who would have spent so much money into jets and into all these technologies that ended up becoming real things? One thing that I heard, though, is that there was a problem with the Glocka devices, that the field that was generated by them was so intense that it would detonate bombs that were passing from the device to the ground. So they couldn't use it as a platform to drop bombs. And that's one of the reasons why it wasn't used during World War II, fighting the Allies.
Well, even if they figured it out, that doesn't mean it was optimized to, the end solution that you actually need to zip around space. They may have had an early precursor of something. They may have had a crude demonstration of a craft.
Right. So it's quite easy enough to rotate Mercury around and also energize it and get it to plasma size. Those are all really easy experiments that I could see being conducted in 1940s with relative ease. And if this paper is correct with like what Mike McCulloch's saying with these Rindler horizons,
$10 million lab with hazmat suits.
Mercury's just straight up inconvenient to work with.
I know, but
on the floor, it's a super big hassle to clean it up, and it's
oh yeah, you gotta have Mercury Spill kits and all that other stuff. Yeah. I was thinking if we ever had to do this, I would build like a whole waterproof shower system and like do and glass and keep a containment room for all the experiments with like a place to collect and recover the mercury if there were a spill.
I mean, when I was in college at UAH, we had a biophysical chemistry lab, and a student just simply broke a glass mercury thermometer one day, and you know how little mercury is in a thermometer. It's really not much, but it like went on the counter and on the floor. It was crazy expensive to hire a specialized company to come out and clean that up. It cost a lot of money for the university to clean up a freaking thermometer spill.
Yeah.
I read somewhere that that technology has a problem where the mercury turns into gold, which was the entire. Well, mercury is a number above gold on the elemental chart, and maybe if you're spinning it and energizing it somehow, it can lose a neutron or something. It could lose a neutron and turn into gold, and that's clogging up.
It's a proton
in the Vimana craft. So, we're down here all trying to get our gold. Well, meanwhile, they're spitting it out because it's clogging up their vents.
I mean, alchemy is real, right? Like transmutation of elements. You can add a neutron to something with a neutron generator.
Can you take a neutron out, though?
I'm sure there's a way to.
So,
you can combine hydrogen and hydrogen. You can take a neutron out.
Spit out a neutron.
While we have you on, I want to get some more like details on sort of. I want to talk a little bit more about the propulsion community and sort of like how this all. Because I know a little bit about this, but you're kind of more of a you know some of these people more on a personal level because you grew up in this town.
Hilarious.
So yes, you were telling me some of the stories and stuff, and I think this is sort of more entertaining and more interesting for me, anyways. And
I got social drama about some propulsion engineers.
I'm gonna go.
So I want to talk about some of the stuff that I know about. Let me just briefly give some of the research that I've done. So I know about Jim Woodward, and I know about Tony Robertson. He put on that SpaceIF conference and the STAFE 2 conference, and I know about STAFE and SpaceIF, and these were like these big propulsion conferences where all these physicists would meet and discuss papers and forward their ideas for propulsion concepts and stuff. And these were a lot of these think tanks where DARPA was going to go and pick up new ideas for concepts for funding. And I know of several like programs, several of these research projects that I've discovered and kind of like stumbled upon by going through those avenues and going through the conferences and finding these programs, and then later finding out links to DARPA funding some of this research and stuff. So I did a lot of that research on my own before I met you, and I know not probably as much about you about some of these people, but I just want to know a little bit. So Tony, Glenn Robertson. His name's Glenn, but everyone calls him Tony.
Glenn Anthony, a.k.a. Tony Robertson.
Yeah, tell us about him.
He's my buddy. So he well, this is
Modelo in the fridge.
This is Modelo. Cool. Okay. Well, Huntsville is the Rocket City, right? We're Rocket City, USA, and we are literally the propulsion capital of the world. Just straight up, Alabama. Who would have thought? But so we have just a massive propulsion engineer community, all in the same place. And there's the NASA Marshall Space Flight Center here on Redstone Arsenal, which was literally established for the space race. Our local university, UAH, was literally established to spit out aerospace engineers for the space race. So they have a big PRL, Propulsion Research Lab, down there. And this is very much the community that I grew up in, right? I'm a Huntsville native. My dad was a NASA Marshall PRL, Propulsion Research Lab researcher, a technical lead down there. And I mean, like the most active propulsion engineers on the planet are people that I heard stories about at the dining room table. And it's really funny. I want to I have this concept for I want to do a TV show that's like a dramedy, a drama comedy about propulsion engineers, because it's a field like no other.
Right. You talked to me about how Big Bang Theory is like a disservice to
It's a
nerds.
disservice.
Because it
Like,
is.
stop.
I can't watch that show. I mean, it's kind of some of it's kind of all right. I watch it a little bit, but it's and I try to pause it and read the equations on his board to see what Sheldon's
How
working on.
how I
But
feel about the Big Bang Theory is I'm like, stop making fun of me because the real shit is much funnier. The real shit is so
I
much more
know,
fun.
right? It always is. It's like
But it's like propulsion engineers are like other propulsion engineers are the only people in the world that understand what the heck they're talking about. It's a very small group that can talk to each other and have the same vocabulary and know what's going on in the conversation. So like they're all kind of forced together socially where, they all know each other. It's such a small community. They all know each other in propulsion.
yeah,
And those are sort of by default they're friends, right? That they're friends with other propulsion scientists, but they all freaking hate each other.
Oh, yeah.
Man,
yeah.
they're the most depressed people in the
They're
world,
like
and
at each other's neck, and they almost fight like schoolgirls. I bet.
they fight like schoolgirls. It's crazy, and they're grouchy old men. That's part of it, but the other part of it is that there's this false sense of competition. There's a
Yeah.
false sense of them being adversaries that really shouldn't be there because it's so crazy underfunded.
Hmm.
At least in the publicly acknowledged sphere, it's so
Is that
crazy.
kind of why they're adversaries, though? They're all vying for the limited pool of funding
They're
that.
all vying for the limited pool of funds that really most of them deserve to get funding to, you have an idea. Let's throw a reasonable amount of money at it to see if it's right or to see if it's wrong. And they all deserve funding, most of them, but they don't all get funding. And so people that should be allies have become enemies through a false sense of competition just because they choke the funding. They choke it until it gasps and dies.
The same thing's happening in religion too.
The program cancellation is, oh my God. Propulsion engineers are the most depressed people I've ever met because they build a prototype that has never been built before in the world. It works the first time they turn it on, just like they, planned that it would. And then they apply for carry-on funding and it's canceled. Over and over and over and over again, canceled.
Yeah,
Chopping
and
block,
this is
chopping.
interesting because I'm just pulling up an article about Star Trek, and this is from 2016. It says NASA's warp drive engine works, and it could take humans to Mars in weeks. And it talks about the M drive and the results that like basically like they got leaked almost before NASA could can the whole thing, which was awesome because they would have just canned this, and it would have been in one of those story. It would just been a story, and no one would know about it. But I'm really happy that people are getting this information out there, and because it belongs in the hands of all of
What
us,
we did at
humanity.
AlienCon was really a punch up the nose for the SSP, and they saw they can't keep this back anymore.
They can't.
While we were there at the conference, I actually went up to one of the panels to ask a question. They shut it down right when I was about to talk.
It's crazy what's going on now, and it's getting even crazier because like I gotten over like 20 electrical engineering students and PhDs in electronics and metamaterials and all these different related fields of photonics and all this stuff. People grad students that are researching this stuff.
I bet they're all
They
depressed.
keep following me. They keep following me on Twitter, and they want to know more. And they're like, and I got a couple in here live tonight trying to, I think they're on the live chat asking questions and arguing with each other too.
They're following you on Twitter because they're looking for hope, because they're probably manically depressed, because there ain't no money for their research and it gets canceled all the time. That would be my guess.
It's
That's
crazy.
been my experience with advanced research. But,
So this new NASA program with the NASA warp drive that they're working on, what's the name of that project there?
which one is it? There's the vacuum here,
What's it?
which is the ion plasma thing.
Yeah.
With warp drive. Hold on, there's a bunch of them. Hold on.
Yeah, there's a couple different ones that are. This is what NASA's working on. If you go to NASA,
it's not the Mach effect, is it? Well, you said EM drive.
No, it's not the Mach effect. No, it's not the EM drive though. This is the one that's. I think it's Sonny White's, the one that Sonny White's doing.
Oh, Sonny White. Yeah, that's M drive. Yeah. I spoke to the people there. I think it was at no, it was actually at MUFON. We talked about Sonny White. With Jan Harzen and the crew there, and they claim that there are more advanced. No, this was while I was writing my presentation on antigravity. Somebody actually emailed me saying that Sonny White has actually had unpublished results that were better than what I published in my video.
Everybody has unpublished results.
I think there's a lot of people with unpolished results, and that people are afraid to publish right now. I think there's a lot of people across a lot of different disciplines that have results that they're, and I've talked to quite a few of them, not just you guys, and the sources that you know. So, yeah.
Oh, this is the EM drive Harold White out of JPL, the Propulsion Physics Lab at Johnson Space Center. Eagle Works is what they were calling
Eagle
it.
Works. The Eagle Works. That's the one I was thinking of. The Eagle Works.
White left the lab he led for a decade to head up R&D at the Limitless Space Institute, a new nonprofit in Houston working to accelerate the human exploration of interstellar space. We should reach out to him. That's another institute.
Yeah, we gotta reach out to all these institutes working on this. There's I had a couple of them on my. I had another couple ones on my list too of these other guys. What was it?
Yeah.
Photon. Was it Photon Energy?
Well, there's like Mark Millis at Tau Zero.
Tau Zero.
And, yeah, he's been around for a while. He's not new. I met him in 2018 at Estes Park. That's hilarious, actually. I was at Estes Park, which is Jim Woodward's private conference, and it's like an invite-only thing. But Tony invited me. My man Tony Robertson invited me, and so I went. And I went with a female scientist friend of mine. And I mean, there's like, I don't know, maybe 40 or 50 people there, and she and I are like the only women. It's like a bunch of old dudes. They're male grad students, and then it's like me and my friend, and we're posing for the group photo, and like one of the old guys, I don't want to name who it was, but it's a well-known guy. He like kind of leaned over to my friend and I, and he was like, "So, I've been watching you all week. Like, who do you work for? Who sent you here?" Like, he was so confused about why 230-something-year-old women were there, and he was like, "I've been watching you, and you're taking notes like you know what's going on. Who sent you?" And we said, "Oh, we work for ourselves." And we just watched his mind explode right in front of us. He's like, "Who do you work for?" We were ourselves, and that wasn't the answer he was expecting, right? Those old men were so confused. They were so confused that they didn't understand what was going on.
Well, what's actually crazy is when MUFON came to New Jersey, I tried to get a booth there, and there was some politics that went on with that. But at the end of MUFON, I went up for the last Q&A and asked Jan Harzen about antigravity and stuff, and he was all excited to go to Estes Park to meet Hal Puthoff. And guess who wasn't at Estes Park? Hal Puthoff wasn't there, but Amy was, and he met her.
Hmm.
I did meet Janet, yeah, at that conference.
So that was pretty interesting.
So another
Yeah,
thing.
I checked into the registration table, and I got there kind of late. Most people had checked in already, and Hal's name tag was sitting there, one of the only ones still unclaimed. And I was like, "Dang it! I was hoping Hal would be here."
So
Yeah.
Hover Brothers, I want to. I have that FalconSpace.org site kind of built for you and everything, and at least a skeleton for it. And I want to give that. I think I'm going to give that one to you, Mark, so you can kind of develop that for around the or find some way to develop that. I don't have time to work on all these different websites, and I want to focus on one. Alien Scientist is kind of like. Yeah, I do want to do some updates to that at some point, but I really want to focus on this Hover Brothers site and this whole idea of getting a database together. The database is going to be key for the research that we're trying to do, because right now it's hard to find the right documents, the right PDFs. Some of this stuff gets shadow banned, it gets taken down. So we need a database that gets consistent, that's not hackable, or that's at least shared between all the members of the group, so that when important stuff goes up there, it all gets shared and mirrored and copied and backed up, and we can have sort of a consistent database to work from for research and for
I
files
can see the database going to be incomplete because, the fact is,
it's going to be complete of disinformation.
Well, kind of what I'm
that's
talking
another
about.
thing. It's going to get flooded. Obviously, if you keep it open to the public, it's going to get flooded with disinformation and just not and whatever else. So there's that.
They might throw the real thing in there too.
Well,
but when you have 1,500 patents to look at, you ain't going to try them all.
There is nothing, zero, that is publicly available, even on like forums with stuff that circulates that's unpublished. There is nothing publicly available that is even close to what anti-gravity really is. The vast majority of these people are barking up the complete and total wrong tree. And if it's published, it's wrong.
Well, here's the thing, right? It doesn't matter. No, I wouldn't say that, because you could come out with the real thing and say it. And it just gets lost among the noise. There's so much other noise, like of Element 115 and all this other stuff, that you could come out with the real thing and say it. And
Element 115 is well published.
Here's why I say if it's published, it's wrong. There's a lot of things that are published. There's a lot of null results that are published, right? Or like results that are like, 0.5% of weight change, or 1.5 tops of weight change, or whatever. The people that publish are the people that aren't close enough to the truth to know the rules about publishing. And the rules about publishing are that you don't. If you have positive data, you ain't in a million years going to publish that shit. If you have published your data, it's because you're not close enough to know the rules. The rules are that you don't publish.
Yeah, but what about all the theory? There's got to be a million theories too, and we don't know which one's right. But that's another thing too. It's like
nothing you find on the internet is even using the right variables. It won't always be that way, but that is in fact the current state of the situation today.
The disinformation goes very deep. Very fucking deep. Like giving Einstein that Nobel Prize.
If you have it, it is known to people who care in surveillance types of ways. If you have the truth, the people who care know that you have the truth. And if you have the truth, it has already been made clear to you what the rules are.
All right, well...
And if you have published, it's because you ain't close enough to have been told the rules that you ain't supposed to publish.
Well, sorry. No, it's, I don't know if I agree with all that, but, I don't know. I think that sometimes, like, that there's information that's published. They can't get around that, so if this is something that other people can figure out, then someone's going to figure it out and publish something on it, and they can't do anything about it. All they can do is suppress it. And
you said a couple who found it.
There's lots of scientists working on very similar stuff right now. A lot of interesting stuff. So they don't. If one person's close or they come out with something, all they got to do is ignore those people. They get such little attention anyway, and then they have the disinformation game on such a lockdown. You know what I mean? With all the stuff that's thrown out to the mainstream, all the stuff that you find in the search engines and stuff. They have the
Yeah.
search engines, the search results, and all that stuff on a lockdown. When you start searching some of this other stuff that we've been talking about, it doesn't come up in search engines really easily. You have to like literally search for a lot of these papers word for word to find them. They hide a lot of this through obscurity and shadow ban is what I found. And you know, like, I know this is legit information. I know like certain information's more legit than others. I know the disinformation's like the first layer of the onion. It's the first stuff you find. It's the stuff that's being pushed on Joe Rogan and all these other on all the mainstream channels and stuff. So that's. But
The first
I
layer of
don't
the
think
onion,
that.
I like how you put that.
There are a specific number of individuals, this many, over the past 100 years, who have independently discovered anti-gravity outside of the government.
Right. There's
You
got to
won't
be other
find
people that.
equations on the internet. They have never been published. It has been suppressed every single time. It may not always be suppressed, but over the past 100 years, there are
So what
people,
about the TR3B?
individuals
Do you
who
know
have
any?
individually
Have you ever heard
independently
about that craft before? I want to know about that
Which
because I was talking about that TR3B. It's supposedly this craft that was
Oh.
developed by the U.S. Air Force, and it's this triangle that's been around since the
Black
80s,
triangle.
70s or something.
She saw it.
You seen it?
I did see it.
What?
Yeah, I've seen it.
What about any?
Fine.
Like who made that thing? Was it Teledyne? Like I don't know. That's what I've been looking for is Teledyne Ryan. I'm looking for all the patents. We can try to like trace back if there's any patents on it. I can't find a damn thing. It's
I don't want to talk about that very much, but it is not who the rumors say developed it. It was not the U.S. government. It did not come out of the black budget.
Right.
It was privately developed, but it was not privately developed by the entity that the rumors suggest, which is a great way to cover it up. If you don't want anybody to know who developed it, leak the wrong name.
So where did you see it?
I don't want to go into that too much because it's kind of like, why did I see it? Probably because it was being test flown. Where did I see it? That's probably the test flight location.
Ooh, that's what I want to know. Where? This is where they keep the thing. Well, if you saw it, it's got to be near where you live. So we kind of narrowed it down already.
Like I see shit. I know shit. I'm in a particular location that has things and knows things, and I will run my mouth about certain things. But when it comes to national security, I ain't stupid.
Well, it's one of the things that you
I ain't gonna talk about everything, man.
One of the things
Yeah.
you mentioned too is these big corporations, all the big nut names like Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, all these big corporations. But
Yeah.
what a lot of my research is finding is that a lot of the real interesting stuff doesn't even happen in those big names anymore. They happen in these little small satellite, like private companies.
For real, the military-industrial complex.
It keeps it more compartmentalized that way. It keeps it easier to hide.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Literally, a private company can keep a secret much better than the government.
Or Martin Marietta, or Lockheed, or one of
That's
these big
why they
companies,
warned
because
about
that's where everyone's
military-
looking now. Everyone's looking in the big companies too. So
Yeah, you're not going to find it in the big companies. If it's in a big enough company like Boeing, they're going to shut it down. Even if they got it, they'll shut it down because their contacts and whoever powers are at play are pushing against it. But I think the power scheme on Earth has changed in the past couple of years, and it's changing quickly. And with COVID, things are moving fast.
yeah, it's definitely at warp speed right now.
The private companies, for sure, have more advanced information and capability and know-how and experience than the federal government. For freaking sure. The most advanced technology on the planet is in the hands of government contractors. Keyword, contractors. Government contractors, private companies.
And you can make up a new company every other day. So
Well, it is I disagree with it's not the big ones. If you're talking about the TR3B, yeah, it's a big company that you've heard of, for sure. It's not in some little startup. It's
No,
a
but
big
they can have
company.
No,
little,
that yeah, right.
little LLCs that this one makes, the landing gear and that pay.
It is
part makes
compartmentalized.
It's
Yes.
compartmentalized to a certain level that nobody has any clue what they're doing, and there's just one facility with maybe 100 workers that put it all together.
There's a lot of people that have secrets, but it's 1,000 secrets or 10,000 secrets that go into a craft. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there are very few people that have all of them.
But only the 100 people that actually put the craft together.
Yeah, it's
and
very
that might
spread out.
not even be on Earth.
Well, it's like you're working on a cog.
I'll fucking call.
And you
Give
don't
me a
know
number.
It's a cog. It's a gear. You don't know what it goes into. You don't see the final picture.
Yeah, I have a buddy who
You work on a cog.
who works on power supplies, and he needs to make them a 10,000 volt power supply at 1 amp, and it can't deviate more than 100. Well, what the fuck are they using it for? Like, who knows?
They ain't gonna tell him.
No, they're not going to tell him.
They're
He's
not
just
telling
one cog in a huge wheel, and they could be sending it off to Mars for all we know to build the TR-3B. Who knows?
I'm not sure that the TR-3B can fly in space. I haven't made up my mind.
Oh, that's
but
what
I
he.
think
Well,
that
Ed
was-
Boucher said it was a space platform. He said it was made to go into space. He said he flew on the thing to Mars one time and got drunk with me. He said he
Wait,
flew
who?
on. Eddie said he flew on the fucking TR-3B, took the triangle
maybe
to
that's
fucking
in the
Mars,
space.
to the moon or something. He said he flew on it one time.
Corey
When he was
Good said
drunk.
he to the moon and Saturn and to all these places.
I know, but I think that's what it was. Is he was watching Corey Good and seeing all the attention he was getting, and just wanted to test me out. That was my intuition when he said it. I was like, you've been watching Corey Good, and you want to test me out to see how, as a feeler, to see if you can get away with saying this and to get more attention. I'm like, that's weird.
Here's
Anyway.
my educated guess about the secret space program. I would say it's real. There is a secret space program for fucking sure. It's real. But I don't know, if I was the US government and I had a secret space program that was secret, I would probably leak rumors that it was more advanced than it actually was, man.
Well, here's the thing:
That's what I'll
that's obviously going on because we're faking
Yeah.
the Chinese out about because World War III is pretty much about to start. They just dumped all their debt, and a couple days ago, there's a lot of tensions going on in the world right now with these political powers and
Yeah.
stuff, and there's definitely an effort to scare for the intelligence agencies to scare China and these other governments into thinking that we have more advanced tech than we do. So that's definitely a piece of it, and you have to kind of see that and understand
if
that in
you
the puzzle.
can't keep a secret, because let's be real, if the secret space program is real, and I'm suggesting it is, it's such a massive program and involves so many people that you cannot keep your secrets. It's very difficult to keep those secrets. And so what you have to do, you have to plan on them leaking. You have to know they're going to leak. And if you want people to not really know what the truth is, you should leak those secrets yourself. You should leak those secrets yourself and control the narrative. And what I would do, and a lot of this is supposition and, just sort of spitballing here, what I would do in that situation is I would leak it to someone. I would pick a person that was a good messenger for whatever variety of reasons.
Like Tom DeLonge. I'm just kidding.
I would leak.
Sorry, I had to go there.
I would bed with the military, basically.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking when I saw TTSA too. I was like, this is exactly what I would do. I was just
Let me wrap up my thought here.
Sorry. Yeah.
If it were me, I would leak the truth to a carefully picked individual, probably multiple carefully picked individuals. I would leak them the truth, and I would leak them some complete, total bullshit mixed in. Bullshit that's easily disprovable, easily debunkable. They'll publish it as a set of leaks. And to discredit the information that you want to stay a secret, you point to the bullshit that you gave them and you say, here, look, guys, it's obviously bullshit.
Right. So
And
this is
included your true information in a set of information that you just painted as obvious bullshit.
Yes, you just highlighted a very common intelligence tactic, and I'll point
Yep.
out a couple different instances where one instance where I know it was used for a fact. It's in Russ Baker's book where he talks about the U.S. National Guard scandal with George W. Bush during his election to the presidency with Karl Rove handled that. Actually, Karl Rove is he was an intelligence genius of how to handle these type of situations. He knows about all this kind of stuff that you're talking about.
Wait, guys.
And Karl Rove, basically what he did is he knew that the story about George Bush and the National Guard was going to get leaked out. He knew it was all going to come out eventually. It was this story, and it was this skeleton in Bush's in W's closet that was going to come to bite him in the ass if it ever came out and found out, right? So what he did is he created a bunch of fake documents about the real thing. And then he released all the fake documents ahead of the friggin' real story. Then he debunked all the fake documents, showed how they were fake, so that way when the real story came out, none of the news agencies picked it up or paid attention to it. It was brilliantly executed.
It's freaking brilliant.
And that was done for real there, and that's a lot of speculation that's what happened with the MJ-12 documents. That they were these real protocols for crash retrieval of extraterrestrials. This real whole system of government put in place by a secret form of government, this 12 members. And then what they did is they created this whole MJ-12, gave it a different name of what the real organization is, and made up this whole fake thing about it, and put a couple, UFO skeptics as the people they said were the heads of it, so that, like Alan Hynek and all this, so that they could, basically hide the real program or hide whatever the real issue, the real MJ-12 is. And you know what I mean? It's the same strategy, the same technique. Yeah, they create the fake story with the real information, and put it out, but then debunk it so that if the real thing ever comes out, it's. Yep.
So the comments on the YouTube are that I'm lying. I see several of them. None of the comments indicate.
There's a bunch of
trolls.
There's a bunch of trolls. You gotta like.
I'm looking at what am I?
Oh, you just started reading the comments. There's a couple trolls in here. I don't know. We got to try to like. Solar Marshall is actually.
Shit. But I'm just curious what I'm lying about because I don't know what I'm lying about. I have no clue. If they know what I'm lying about, they should tell me because I don't know.
This is actually Solar Marshalls. That's the Solar Marshal. Why don't you say that, man? The plasma engine's in the corner.
Come on here with clearance and just talk really. I don't have a clearance. I run a private company. And our data and our IP is proprietary trade secret. I don't have a clearance. I grew up in the propulsion community. I don't have a clearance.
What did she lie about the TR3B? What did she say about the TR3B that was a lie, Solar? I'm trying to get this straight.
Tell me what I'm lying about, because I don't know.
Yeah, scroll down to the bottom.
Yeah, what did she say about the TR3B? I didn't really hear her say much about the TR3B. She said it's not a craft that travels in space. Oh, yeah, I already called her on that.
She said that's her theory about it. Like, she hasn't seen it travel through space. She's seen it on the ground. She's not going to speculate that it can, go to Alpha Centauri in 2 seconds.
I know something. Look, dude, I know some things about the TR3B. I don't know everything. I don't work on it. I don't have a clearance. I'm a private individual who happens to have been raised in the space community, but I've seen it in flying around in the atmosphere.
But you said you knew who you could say you knew who makes the craft, but you can't say it because I've heard about this too, about who makes the craft.
What have you heard?
This is all compartmentalized shit. You get people that whisper in your ear. Yeah. They don't know everything either. They know some they know some kind of detail. They don't know everything. Neither do I. I know some tiny details. It's very hard to get a real clear image of the whole picture at this point in time. It's really hard. You get pieces of the puzzle.
Oh, okay. So he wants some questions. So you said you saw it take off. What size was the craft that you saw?
No, I didn't see it take off. I saw it hovering around,
like a couple hundred feet up, and then it just moved out of.
It was low. It was over a neighborhood. It was the size of a fighter jet. It was a matte black triangle. It had a white light on each of 3 corners. It had a red light in the middle. on top. The red
How
light
many
was on
people
top.
do you think
The
fit in
size
that
of a
plane?
fighter jet
It
was
was
the
the size of a
dimensions.
fighter jet. It was
Fighter
like
jet.
there might be 2-3 people tops in there for the one I saw, but
So
I don't know.
30 meters.
30
Yeah,
meters, like 100 feet.
100
well,
feet.
Are you talking about each side, or are you talking about like
No,
across?
it
just the
was like
total
this
length.
was 50 or something.
B-52 is pretty big. That would be
I
like
mean, it was large, but it wasn't bigger than like a 2-man fighter jet, or
mhm.
I don't know. I saw it like kind of like across the road over a neighborhood. It
So
hovered there for, I don't know, it kind of went back and forth like this.
so
It was totally silent. And then it just kind of went away like down below the horizon of the rooftops and I couldn't see it anymore. I don't know. I had a bunch of friends with me and we were all like, oh my God, that's a
so could
TR3B.
it have been a
We're like, yeah,
TR3A
check it
though?
out.
Could it have been
TR3B.
could have been a Black Manta? Because it sounds like the smaller version one. The TR3B was allegedly like a really big. It was it's a space platform. It's a massive craft and it was specifically designed to go into space, according to like.
I think they have multiple versions of it probably at this point. I'm sure they got a big
Well,
one.
the
And
TR3A was a different craft, and that's like you can look up the TR3A Black Manta, right?
yeah.
And that
Oh,
was
so it could have been a TR3A. It could have been the smaller version of that.
I mean, look, it was at night. I wasn't standing right next to it. I saw it sort of from a distance. But it was a matte black triangle craft that was like a VTOL kind of thing, right? Because it was hovering in place. It wasn't moving linearly. It was like this. Had a white light on each of 3 corners, red light in the middle on top. I don't know. That's what I saw. Was it a TR3B? I think it was some version of that craft. I don't know exactly which model number it was, man. They didn't give me the spec sheet. I just saw it.
So-
They didn't hand me the spec sheet.
Yeah.
You think that
Or
TR3
do you think it was an accident?
Dude, I don't know. People see things in the sky all the time, especially around certain areas. I mean,
lots of people have seen these black triangles. I know like tons of people who have seen these things flying around. I have never seen one personally. I actually did a job for a guy. I don't really talk a lot about UFOs with my customers at work and stuff, but every once in a while it does come up. And I worked a job for a guy who said when he was like a teenager with his friend in high school, they were out in the woods and this triangle crash. I was telling him about the triangle, and he's like, "Dude, when I was in high school, we were out in the woods in this place and like." Down near it was down near Quonset Air Force, and near the Air Force Base down here in Rhode Island. And he said he saw this triangle craft come up and like followed him and his friends. It like hovered over them and with their bikes, and then it flew off. And I was like, "What the hell? This is like a normal like."
craft is. I'm sure there's multiple versions.
Dude, it's totally not into UFOs at all.
It has been around for a while. It's not a new thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not new.
Yeah, there's a lot more to this subject than just anti-gravity, UFOs, and TR3Bs. We got religion involved here too. And
I know that's your specialty, Mark. Is
that is special.
Because all these ancient scriptures are just really alien worship and really, the Nephilim, all these beings from space are really angels and whatnot with winged beings from space. Yeah.
You just put me in contact with this guy from India who has a similar perspective on the Indian religions, and I think he's right. You got to read into all that stuff. There are secrets of anti-gravity written in the Bible and written in the ancient Hindu Sanskrit or whatever.
Interesting. That was.
Damn.
That was. This sounded like Marco Rodin now.
Different elements. We talk about different elements in the Mahabharata. That
every time Marco Rodin. All right, so Marco Rodin, the mathematician, I met him at a conference in 2009, and I started asking him like these math questions, and he kept referring to these scriptures, and I have to look in the scriptures, these ancient scriptures that like gave him all this insight and stuff, but he never gave me the answers. He would just always say that there was these scriptures that like gave him the information or something. I don't know. I kind of thought he was. I thought he was dodging or stalling, personally, but maybe.
I'm sure there's qualitative facts in those religious texts that are true, but
So,
quantitatively, it don't help you that much
but
in
yeah,
terms of calculation.
we're also trying to set up an international disclosure team for like a lot of this information and getting stuff out. So that's why I hooked up with that guy in India. He's connected with a lot of other. He runs a disclosure network over there. And we're trying to link up with all the disclosure and kind of networks that exist out there and are going out there, so that we can get plugged in if and when we have information that comes forward and that we need to get out, that we have a network to do so, and people who are on board to help get information out if that's what happens in the future.
It needs
So
to happen for real, and it can't be buried. It needs to happen in a way that everyone's convinced, and we're moving on to the next era. And I think after disclosure, you're going to see suddenly the amount of money that you've been wanting all this time being poured in a very short amount of time. And the investment in anti-gravity technology and all of the peripheral technologies that are necessary for...
There's a lot of peripherals you need.
There's a lot of peripherals. It's not just anti-gravity. I mean, anti-gravity can't even get you out of the atmosphere. Like,
right. So
you need to build a craft that has habitable atmosphere and all that stuff. There's a lot more stuff that are involved.
Yeah, the Pythagorean theorem. Oh, I'm getting
that too.
We're getting all these people going off.
Right.
You hit a spark about this religious stuff and all these scriptures, man. All these people are going off about all this stuff now, because it's true that the Pythagorean theorem was not invented by Pythagoras. He's just a Greek philosopher who learned it from Indian mathematicians and taught it to the Greeks. So these things came from more ancient cultures.
From exposure,
these Boeing
and Airbus and SpaceX are going out of business because there is no way you're going to need a rocket propulsion.
They're going to be able to keep up. There's no way they would be able to keep up if this came real.
It's like horse breeders after the Model T.
Well, I'm sure they have shit other than chemical rockets that they have in an early stage.
I hope they do.
So where's the anti-gravity in the Bible? She's saying there's no anti-gravity in the Bible. Mark, you're the biblical scholar. Where's the anti-gravity in the Bible? She's saying this.
Well, you could look at Ezekiel, and it talks about chashmal, which is electricity in modern Hebrew, and how the craft was coming down like a whirlwind, and there was 3 angels on board, and he goes into crazy descriptions, dyslexic kind of stuff of what happened with the angels. You can look at Genesis, you can look at Exodus, where it talks about how God, Jehovah, landed on the mountain and there was pillars of fire. Rocket engines? Why did they have rocket engines? Why did they need rocket engines? Was he just putting a show? Then they split the sea. How the fuck did they do that? The second I'm going to build a craft that can split the sea, Judaism is dead. No more Judaism. Like, if you remain religious, worshiping a dead alien, after I showed you how to split the sea using technology, I might need his thorium reactor to make that happen. I don't know how much energy it takes. But if I could split the sea using a spacecraft that looks like a pillar of fire, and you're still worshiping an alien, God help you.
Well, okay, so the pillar of fire, and saying what? Are they using rockets? Do you not have anti-gravity or what?
I think they were just putting on a show. I think that was just like, awe and shock and you shaking the ground. And, they could have landed nice and quiet. But they brought out the rockets. They brought out the subwoofers. They were like,
if this ever happens, and I want to get a real platform with a real show, and we're gonna have like a cage match fight going on during every podcast, and like we'd have this Nixa guy going at it with Skull and Beam Me Up, Mr. Scotty, because it looks like friggin' WW. It's like WWF in the chat over here, man. It's like freaking. This is ridiculous, man. I don't know how these guys get on my video, but it's like I'm trying to answer questions and stuff, and I'm reading this crap.
So you said the pillar of fire, and you said what? Are they using chemical rockets? Why is there a pillar of fire?
You said pillar of fire. That's interpretation as a pillar of fire. Yeah. What is a pillar of fire, and what does that mean? Is that just like a
just along the idea of, well, were they using chemical rockets? I would like to suggest that just because a more advanced species, or not species even, but group of people, like you and me, but just more advanced, just because they landed on the planet and they were more advanced than we were at the time, doesn't mean that they're all powerful or that they have every piece of technology out there that's available. Like if we showed up on
No, it doesn't. But
like if we went to Mars right now and found a colony of people there, which some people think there's a colony of people there. I don't know. I haven't been there. If we went to Mars right now, we could land on Mars right now, maybe in a couple years with what Elon's doing. Just because we landed on Mars don't mean we're actually that advanced. You can have a craft that can get you from Earth to Mars, and it might still be pretty crude. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, these people don't necessarily have
iPhones.
Everything.
No, like even iPhones.
They got a lot of shit. They got some cool shit, but it don't mean that they're like all powerful.
No, there's no such
They're
thing as
people.
all powerful. Like literally, the purpose of
They're people
of religions
that are farther along than us. That's about it.
The purpose of religions is brought up in Stargate as well. They're basically talk about these ascended beings that want us to worship them in order to give them power. And that's literally what Judaism does. It makes you bless a dead alien for giving you an apple. Let that sink in for a second. You take an apple and you say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri ha'etz, which basically means, thank you, Yehovah, the our alien overlord, the commander of the universe who controls everything, which is a complete lie. So you're making a statement toward a reality.
All religion's
that is
crazy, dude.
helping a dead alien ascend.
Well, okay, so you're
I
talking
tell
about
Christians that they're
aliens, but you're not really giving the background context on what you mean by that.
Yeah, it's spiritual slavery.
No. Explain why you're saying that Jews worship a dead alien.
Because
who was Jehovah? Why are you saying he's an alien, and why are you saying he's dead?
Well,
give some background.
Okay, so some background. So basically, Jehovah came into the picture with Abraham, and he left sometime during the first temple. So it's fair to say that he lived probably 2,000-3,000 years.
Who was he? What was he?
What was he? He was a physical being that spoke to these people. Now, he was probably a very advanced extraterrestrial that knew how to do some tricks. He got telekinesis, telekinetic.
He was an individual.
He was an individual.
Okay.
Just like you and me.
Not a god. An individual from another planet.
That is what a god is. An individual from another planet.
Well.
Yes. Zeus, Poseidon, Hercules, these were all individuals from other planets. Revered alien is what God means. God just means revered alien.
Revered alien.
And you put that in context of everything, you'll see that it all suddenly fucking makes sense.
And why are you saying he's dead?
Why are you saying he's dead? Because nobody's seen him since then. And according to Billy Meyer, he died in 1356 BC, was killed by his son. And his other two sons kicked that son off Earth. One of them still lives in Switzerland.
So he was an individual extraterrestrial, maybe
Lyrian.
Like humanoid?
He looked like he was a Lyrian, so they look like... This is all...
I'm extracting this out of you for the audience because it's unclear what you're talking about unless you explain.
They're blonde hair, blue eyes, sort of like the forebearers of the Aryan race. So they have a very high IQ. They're very, strong-bodied, athletic, and they also have the knowledge of.
So, Mark, I got a biblical scholar in here, and he's trying to argue, and I just want to say that you read the Bible in the original form and translated it from Hebrew, right? You actually speak Hebrew, right? And
yeah, I speak Hebrew.
Okay, so this says so she believes in Billy Meyer. I ain't said shit about Billy Meyer.
I said
dude,
Billy Meyer.
Stop this, dude. He hasn't said shit about Billy Meyer, and no one's talking about Bob Lazar or Billy Meyer, dude. Like, I'm taking away this dude's admin.
I don't endorse everything he says. He doesn't endorse everything I say. We're sitting here next to each other.
What I can say about the Bible is that if you learn it in its original Hebrew form, there's a lot more telling things that went on in there. And all of the questions that the rabbis had that because I learned the Bible in its original Hebrew form, and there was always these questions, and they would say teku, which is a acronym for Tishbi Ataretz Kushas Vavos, which is Aramaic for that when the Messiah comes, these questions will be answered. Well, I got a fucking answer for all of them. The answer is aliens.
I'm not saying it was aliens.
Yeah, it was aliens.
Judaism is satanic and Old Covenant faith.
I'll start with one thing. Jeremiah, here's something interesting. Right. The first verse of the Bible is Bereshit bara Elohim es hashamayim v'haaretz, which means in the beginning, Jehovah, the Elohim created the heavens and the earth.
All right.
Now the question is, the letters of the Bible were given over as a stream of letters, and the spaces that we put in there were arbitrary. The rabbis decided. Now the first question was, why did the Bible start with the second letter of the alphabet? Should have started with the first letter.
All right. I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about the Bible anymore, or religion. I want to talk about back to the title. Let's go back to the title of this video. How in the next 10 to 20 years will change everything as we know it. So I want to talk about technology, where we're going in the future, and how we're going to get there, and what we're trying to put together, and what you guys want to add to the team.
How we're going to get to the future is by doing it ourselves.
Right.
Because people like to be like, oh, Star Trek is cool. I can't wait until we're there.
Okay, so on that note, right? You say we're doing it for ourselves.
You don't get off your ass and do it.
So I also want to stay on that note about secret space program, right? So that this kind of idea, we have to do it ourselves. Even if there is a secret space program that already developed this, which I don't necessarily believe that there is, or haven't seen the exact evidence for. I still see a lot of evidence that all this money that's gone thrown down the tubes is just blatant, government misspending and mismanagement of funds and fat cats lining their pockets. Maybe none of that. Maybe that went to buying fucking dudes yachts and cocaine and stripper parties on their friggin' penthouses and stuff. You don't necessarily know that it went to building all these secret space force and these secret space programs and sending people to Mars for 20 years and back and all this stuff. I don't know if I believe in all that stuff because there's a lack of real strong evidence for a lot of that stuff, in this field. So it's we have to go where the evidence lies, and there's definitely a lot of evidence for overspending and these fat cat bureaucrats who just waste money and mismanage and kind of mismanage all these operations. So I want to know. Even if what we said is exactly on the point, because even if these programs exist, even if that money went toward building real secret technology that's out of our reach, disclosure is never going to fucking happen. And all these people asking for it and praying for it and waiting for it are a joke, in my opinion. And I just want to say that we have to discover it ourselves. We're going to have to build it ourselves and get it out of these programs. There's no doubt in my mind. That's the only path forward.
I grew up in the military-industrial complex. It's just, roll the genetic cosmic dice. I was born in Huntsville, Alabama, space capital of the world, blah, 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 whatever. And I know some things. I don't know everything. Look, I'm a person that grew up in the middle of some shit, military-industrial complex style. So I would say the secret space program, yeah, it's real. But again, like I said earlier, if I was in charge of that shit, I would leak rumors that it was more advanced than it actually was to make myself seem cool. That's what I would do. But I would also say, okay, let's say the secret space program is real. It's run by people, dude. People fuck up. People waste money. People spend money on shit they shouldn't. People are inefficient, make mistakes, run their fucking mouths, leak secrets. They're flawed human individuals. Let's say the secret space program is real. They ain't all powerful. They're not as cool as they say they are. They are pretty advanced. They're not as advanced as the rumors would have you believe. They're people. They're people.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Nixa wrote in the comments, disclosure won't happen because most people don't want it, even less demand it.
Oh,
yes.
Dude, I want to address that. I've been thinking about this for a while. The cover-up. A lot of people say there's a cover-up for this, the whole alien. There's aliens, there's UFOs, there's a cover-up, there's a secret space program, there's a cover-up. Okay. They put a lot of time and effort into that cover-up. Time, money, FTE, full-time employee, program, time and effort, money into the cover-up. And guess what? If they change their minds and they say, we're ready to come out with this now, fuck, we did too good of a job with the cover-up. We brainwashed them on purpose. We told them all that it's impossible, it's not real. You've been watching too much TV. You've been watching too much sci-fi. What, you've been watching Stargate? That's not real. They put a lot of time, money, and effort into making us think that it's impossible, implausible, and fucking crazy. So that means to me that if they decide that they're ready to disclose now, it's going to be really hard, because they did a really good job of brainwashing people that it was impossible. They did a good job. And now if they want to disclose now, it's an uphill battle, because they did such a good job of discrediting it, that now that they've changed their minds, fuck, people already think it's impossible and it's their fucking fault. They shot themselves in the foot 50 years ago. They're ready. If they're ready to disclose now, it gonna be hard. They did a good job of the cover-up. People think it's impossible, it's crazy, it's not real, because they were told that. It's hard to unbrainwash someone, like you just said.
It's gonna be weird, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
What I'm really worried about, what I'm kind of worried about, sorry guys.
Yeah.
I'm worried about is there's a delay, so as soon as I start talking, it's like you guys start going because of the delay. I was gonna say I'm worried about, like, in the future, it's like all the real research that got done by all these scientists that really discovered these things they're just gonna come out with disclosure and say that it all came from aliens, and then aliens did it, just so they can cover up the real research programs and all the funding that went into it and all the how they hid it from us for years and kept us like basically enslaved and held back.
Jeremy, can you turn on your camera? I can't really see you right now. We're just seeing ourselves the whole time.
I'm looking at my bookcase right now. I don't see you.
I can't use the camera on both. My camera is being used by the streaming software, and it won't let me use it for both Skype and the streaming software. So it won't let me turn it on.
Okay. So we'll try to watch you on YouTube then.
I accept that explanation. That's cool.
It doesn't let me. No, it kicks it out on the other one. Yeah, it just. It didn't.
I see you on YouTube now.
Would not connect to selected cameras.
You got a NASA shirt on. You representing.
Yeah, I do. You didn't see that. Yeah. I went and saw some NASA shirts at Target the other day. I needed some new summer shirts, and I was like, yeah.
NASA's making a comeback. I grew up in a NASA family, like deeply entrenched in NASA culture shit. I never once had a NASA t-shirt until a couple years ago. I grew up in this shit. I went to NASA picnics and shit like that. I didn't have any NASA swag until recently, because they just started selling it at Target like 2 years ago. And so I bought some NASA shit at Target finally after a lifetime. I have a sweatshirt now finally after a lifetime.
Yeah, they started selling
but
it.
They're making NASA's like out in the public eye more than it used to be.
Yeah, in Target. Which is the only store that's open right now because of COVID. They got a whole bunch of stuff.
They do.
How do you make it full screen again?
How do you make it full screen again? I don't know. Click on something and make it full screen. No, so right there. Yeah. Right?
No.
Sorry, we clicked on something and we fucked it up. Well, he clicked on something and he fucked it up.
No, I think what happened was that Jeremy tried sharing his something with us.
No, you clicked on something and fucked it up.
I did. I clicked on it.
Jeremy, did you click on something and fuck it up?
I clicked on the camera thing to try and do it and said we could not connect to your selected camera since it may be in use by another application.
We're looking at your avatar now. It's fine. You've got a backwards hat on in your avatar.
Yeah.
I like it as
my Boston hat. Depending on location, blah, 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 blah. Any other questions for our guests here, or anything else we want to talk about besides more? Yeah, she lied.
Dude, I don't think if anyone thinks XYZ about me, man. I've been there, done that.
He thought you lied because you said you saw a triangle, but it wasn't the right size to be a TR3B. So it was probably something else. But it doesn't mean you know you saw a TR3B. Do you say you worked on a TR3B?
I don't know which version number it was, man. They didn't send me the spec sheet. I just fucking saw it in the sky.
Right, but you don't have any knowledge of any kind of. Anything about these black triangles or nothing. That's what he was more getting at, but I don't.
I'm exposed enough to MIC shit that I hear things, but you know what? A lot of people hear things. It's really hard to confirm anything. It's really damn hard.
That's hearsay. Again, I agree. I wanted more.
He's just.
It's a lie in the Bible.
Yeah, Sherry, yeah, which means I am that I am.
So
And the
here's
apple,
a
something
comment.
about the apple. The apple isn't
I'm
really an
looking at these
apple.
2 comments. Here's a comment. It simply says space is fake. I love it, man. Space is fake.
Space is
Good comment.
fake.
Good
Ah,
comment.
jeez. I like the whole thing about
There's stuff
Stephen.
about space that is fake for sure.
I liked Stephen Wolfram's
Space
model
isn't
where he
fake.
says that space is everything. Everything's just space. There's really no particles. Particles are really just space. Everything's space. I love that. I love that.
Solar Marshall is making fun of me for saying that they didn't send me the spec sheet. They did.
Oh, she's
They
saying
did.
you saw
They
one
did
launched,
flying around.
and
It wasn't about.
he wants to know
It
what you
wasn't
think
about
of
anything.
Bob
They
Lazar.
want the spec sheet.
What she think of Bob Lazar? He knows something. Is he telling the truth? I don't know everything. I don't know if he's telling the truth. Have you been to Area 51? I haven't. I haven't been to Area 51. I think that he knows something. He probably knows things that he thinks are true that aren't. Bob Lazar's been lied to like everybody else.
Oh, Jordan Belville wrote.
Everybody's been lied to. So has Bob Lazar.
But Jordan Belville wrote.
Uh,
Remote viewing.
Remote viewing is real.
Yeah. I know somebody who remote views and tells us what's going to happen tomorrow. Literally. Every single day.
It's annoying what he does.
Yeah, he'll like
Actually.
ask a question. Oh, do you know where your whatever is?
Don't go too much into it. But
yeah, it gets a little crazy, but he basically tells us what's going to happen tomorrow.
No, that remote viewing is real. It's not, dude. It's not magic. It's not occult. It's not mystical. It's just some fucking physics that we don't understand yet.
Well, that makes it mystical.
That's what I want.
Remote viewing is real. It involves physics, nuts and bolts, physical phenomenon that we just happen to not understand very well right now. And so it makes it seem extreme, mystical, but it's not just physics.
If remote viewing's real, right, and then Hal Puthoff kind of developed this whole remote viewing thing, and they worked on a lot of it since the 70s, at least, the U.S. Army Psychological Warfare Program. I just don't understand why our intelligence agencies still train spies with the traditional methods of spycraft, and why we're not completely switched over to remote viewers.
Hal Puthoff didn't invent remote viewing. I'm sorry, I heard half of what you said, and I was looking at he didn't invent remote viewing.
Well, he worked on it. So my question is, if remote viewing works, right, why haven't all our intelligence agencies just stopped training spies and just started training remote viewers? Because if it's fucking that fucking good, we just stop training spies and we'd only train remote viewers. You know what I mean?
Remote is like,
because that's fucking way better. It's way better than any kind of. If remote viewing's real, then it's way better than any kind of spy that we could ever have in the intelligence that they can collect. If the accuracy's there, that's all I have to say about it.
Like all early stage technologies that are known but not 100% fully understood.
I'll tell you right. I don't believe in remote viewing at all. Really? Not at all. 0%. I give it 0% credibility.
It happens to be.
I put it on par with just pure pseudoscience, and I'm just like,
no, it's not. Hal did not invent remote viewing, but did he run a program for the CIA through SRI, Stanford Research Institute, for many, many decades? Yes, he did. He really did do
that.
Now,
was the point of that program to really research the capabilities of remote viewing, or was it to convince, other people that, like our adversaries like Russia, that remote viewing was real, to fuck with them as sort of like a psychological Cold War operation? Because that's what it looks like to me. Because that's all it looks like to me. That's the full extent of it. It looks like a psychological operation against people, because it's also a psychological operation, because once someone out there believes remote viewing's real and that I can have a fucking spy just zoom into your bedroom and look at everything you're doing, then it kind of gives people just a sense of insecurity, complete insecurity, because we have no, you have no kind of security. It's kind of like on par.
Crude.
You know what I mean?
The answer is that it's crude.
So if it's crude, it doesn't have a high enough. it doesn't have a high enough accuracy rate to be used for intelligence purposes as actionable, unless it has
Let me
over.
let me opine for like 30 or 60 seconds.
Okay.
Is remote viewing real? Yeah. Did Hal invent it? No. Did he study it
Who
at length
invented it?
decades for the government? Yes. Does it work? Yes. Is it all powerful? No. It's a crude technology that we just barely understand. And remote viewing really is like, can they see everything you're doing in your bedroom? Maybe if you have a really freaking good, viewer that you're working with, maybe. But I think the reality of remote viewing is that they get vague details that are not crystal clear.
Then what good is
A
it?
remote viewer might be given a piece of information to focus on,
Then
and
what's
they
the
might
point?
tell you something like, it's green. Well, what does that mean? They'll give you information that is accurate, but it's not going to be crystal clear, 100% of the
kind of like
to have.
sounds like cold reading almost. These psychic techniques that people use to fake psychic abilities. You know what I mean?
Well, cold reading is when they are interacting with a person and they kind of take hints from the person to come up with something that's accurate just by reading the person's face or reading their body language or what they say, right? But with remote viewing, you're not necessarily sitting in front of the target. So you're not necessarily reading their body language. It's not necessarily just fake psychology. They are getting data from a distance. It's called remote viewing because they're getting data from a distance. They are doing that successfully, but it might be vague, incomplete data. And they might have to guess
and also
pretty heavily to fill in the blanks.
Also, if you're looking at the future, you might see a different parallel timeline. There are different timelines that exist, and you can remote view and hit the wrong thing and think that something's going to happen when it doesn't really happen.
Well, the timeline stuff is like a whole different episode almost to go into. But yeah, if you're remote viewing the future, I would assume that it's not crystal clear and that you might get an indication of something that's sort of vague. And you might scratch your chin and be like, what does that mean? And it might be kind of hard, actually, to discern what it means.
Yes,
you might have
there's
some
another thing. There's another interesting thing that I might point out because some people are bringing some stuff up in the chat about this. The random number generators thing. You know about the random number generators thing with that when everybody focused on them or did this thing, all the random number generators started spitting out like the same number, and they weren't random. They went not random for a certain period of time. I don't know. It's something that happened right before 9/11 too, with all these random number generators.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. There was a quantum coin flipper, right? And flip heads, tails, heads, tails, 1 0 1 0 1 0, and you would expect to see a random, stochastic random distribution most of the time. And what you're referencing is right before 9/11, the quantum coin flipper went nuts, and it was, statistically more ones than zeros than it should have been, to simplify. Without going too much into it,
the z-score, the normal distribution went off where it wasn't completely random.
The bell curve was shifted.
Yeah, and
so without too much, because I don't want to, I would say I believe in quantum noise, and I believe that quantum noise can travel through time. I believe if you had the right sensor, you could pick it up.
What about remote smelling?
But it might be remote smelling.
That's what someone said in the thing.
I think you could read quantum noise like you could read any other type of noise, and there's information there, but it might be kind of hard to discern what that information means, man. Because let me go back to saying it's a crude science. We know some things that are pretty advanced. We don't know everything. We're at the cusp of an exponential curve. Imagine an exponential curve like this. If you're at the beginning of an exponential curve, you're going to have a foundation that can develop into much, 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 much more. but it's a foundation. It's not the final product. That's my first point about the exponential curve. My second point about the exponential curve is inspiring, at least to me personally. If you live at the beginning of an exponential curve, and if you're active in trying to influence the outcome of that exponential curve, being at the beginning is the best place to be, because it's exponential. It means you can do something now that may seem small to you at the moment, today, right now. But the beauty of exponents is it's not small 5, 10, 20, 100 years from now. It's big. What that means to me as an individual personally is that free will is real, and that I or Mark or you could change the world in the future through a very small action today that turns into a really big outcome in the future. And that's inspiring, because it means you have power to do something now that has an impact to a much greater degree later than what you actually did today. I don't know. That's my philosophizing about exponents.
This guy over here, PB,
What?
which has a dog face that's similar to Tom.
It's a cute face. It's a cute dog.
Founders Remote Viewing talks about SRI, Duke, Rhine. Do you know all these places?
I mean, I know SRI. I don't know.
Directors of Stargate. Yeah, he talks about Stargate too.
Anomalies for 9. Yeah, so I would expect. So the anomalies in the quantum coin flipper for 9/11, it happened not at the moment that the plane impacted the first of the two towers, right? It happened like a few hours before, right? It happened the anomaly on the quantum coin flipper that happened a few hours before impact. And what that tells me is that a significant event happened a few hours before impact that significantly changed the future, even though it had not happened yet. It was a potentiation. So when the quantum coin flipper went crazy a few hours early, it was probably the moment that they stepped on the plane and their passports weren't rejected. It was the moment that their box cutters made it through security. It wasn't the moment of impact. It was the moment that ensured or made much more likely the moment of impact. The exponential change happened before impact. It happened the moment the impact became very likely, which was probably just as they boarded the plane, just as they made it through security without being caught, etc., whatever specific example. Do you get what I'm saying?
Right. I'm just trying to see if there's anything related to the computers that could have caused it. I know there was some computer stuff going on inside with that, but I don't want to get into 9/11 and all that
9/11 is
stuff.
a whole different can of worms, man.
It's a whole another can of worms, so I'm not
Building
gonna.
7, did they pull the trigger? What? Building 7. Sorry, that's a whole different can of worms.
Yeah. So,
Thermal. What?
Fair enough. Lots of people know about that. But Promise was one of the softwares, and it was.
What's a coin flipper? Sorry, someone just asked what's a coin flipper, so I just want to explain what I'm talking about. A quantum coin flipper is basically like if you had a circuit that had like a stochastic signal. Stochastic meaning, random. Pretty close to true random, like noise, electrical noise. You have a circuit that produces electrical noise. Okay. If you have random noise, can you influence it to not be random anymore? Can you influence something that is 50-50 ones or zeros? Can you influence it to be 60% ones instead of 50% ones? Or 70% ones instead of 50? Or like heads or tails should be truly random. in a coin flipper scenario, because like in a physical coin scenario, one side of the coin is heavier than the other and it'll flip what it flips to heads more often. But in a stochastic electrical noise situation, it's going to be about 50-50, 1 or 0, right? The quantum coin flipper is when the quantum noise influences that electronic circuit to be more heads than tails, or to be more ones than zeros. And that doesn't tell you a lot, right? It tells you something is different. It doesn't necessarily tell you what that something is. It's a noise data interpretation. A lot of this future information shit, like remote viewing or quantum coin flippers, getting information from the future, I'm sorry, it's often vague. It's often vague because it's not resolved yet. It's like Schrodinger's cat. Is it alive or dead? It's not resolved yet.
Well, I don't know if
It might be more likely to be dead or alive, but it's not resolved yet. We don't know for sure yet.
Right. I don't have a resolved hypothesis for exactly why those quantum number coin flippers, did what they did there, or why these remote viewing experiments seem to have a point, whatever, a very small bit of a positive. They do have positive results from time to time.
I would even venture to say that just because you get future data from remote viewing, it may be the most likely outcome in the future. It doesn't mean it's guaranteed. Let's say today you get some future information about a year from now via remote viewing.
So
free will still exists. You maybe still can change the future, even if you have some divination prediction about the future today.
It's kind of weird because if we could somehow convince all the academia to believe in this and just push for it, then just the belief in it would make it manifest into reality almost. It could collapse the wave function in the opposite direction. Because right now we have all these skeptics on here, and when I start like talking about setting up a foundation and raising funding or getting money for any kind of research or doing anything, the first fucking thing I get is scam artists. That's the first thing out of these people's mouths is scam artists. And it's kind of like they're almost like dooming the wave function, collapsing the wave function right there. You know what I mean? It is a sense. It's a sense of like this, quantum consciousness that we're all arriving at. Because it's like, all right, that's the reality. Is like we don't want to fucking believe in anything besides the bullshit that we were taught in school, and this is the way it fucking is, and you're too stupid if you can't understand it or you have any questions about it or you start arguing with what your teachers tell you, and I don't know. It's kind of like this. It's kind of like this whole idea that we're collapsing our quantum consciousness and creating this collective reality through our quantum collective consciousness at the same time. That I can see, and that I think is a real thing. But we need to somehow change that within the academia and the other communities. Is make people, get this in people's heads that yes, we are going to do this. We're going to create this. We're going to figure out this technology. We're going to build these craft and get off this planet, and it's going to fucking happen. And no one is going to fucking stop us. And then we need to get that this sort of mentality, because it's all these naysayers and these skeptics and these doubters who are basically forcing us into that timeline and that other reality by collapsing the wave function in that opposite direction by closing their minds off to things.
I think that's a good point. I think there's the idea of the self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
If you're not willing to entertain the fantastical, if you're not willing to make a hypothesis and then do an experiment to see whether it works or not, it's never going to work. Mm-hmm. If all you do is look for reasons that it won't work, and you never look for ways that it would work, guess what? It's never going to work.
Because you're not going to even try it.
Pushing the envelope and advancing technology absolutely requires, as a prerequisite, it requires the willingness to believe that maybe it's possible. Yeah, that's how you do new shit.
Don't
You
say it's
do
impossible. Just try to find out ways that it won't work. I mean, it's important to point out ways that it won't work because there's all these people saying because there's lots of disinformation out there and things that don't
well, it
work, and
saves you time.
it saves
If
you
you can
time if you know
identify
it
the
doesn't
ways
work.
that it won't work, it saves you time because you don't waste your
Yes.
time on the shit that won't work.
Well, that's the
But
other thing why I think negative results are just as important as positive results. We were talking about that with our experiments in the lab and everything, right, Mark? Because we get to tell people
Yeah,
what
negative
didn't work.
results show you where not to go.
Yeah.
that is a valid point. I mean, academia doesn't value negative results, and it's really hard to publish a paper of negative results, but it's useful information to other people that are trying new things for them to not waste time on shit that's not going to work.
Right. So long as you're being honest and so long as you're actually trying to make it work and not, tweaking a working experiment to make it not work like I've seen before.
If you say if you declare something impossible, you just made it impossible
Right.
because you didn't even try. Now, you will try some shit that won't work along the way. Just because you say, like, you might say, I declare it's going to work. That's not going to make it work necessarily. You have to have a willingness to explore to find something. If you say it's not going to work, it's impossible, it's a non-starter. But if you say it's possible, I'm just not sure yet how it's going to work. I need to find out. I need to try a few things and figure out what works. You're much more likely to find something than if you close your eyes and say it's impossible.
Right. Well, also, this guy made a good point. He said it's also about non-locality versus cause and effect, and the hypothesis needs to be falsifiable for there to be progress. So yeah, you can't just make guesses. You have to make guesses that can be proven wrong, not just guesses that, well, we don't, like.
Self-fulfilling prophecy. So you can say it's not going to work and therefore it never works because you didn't even try.
Yeah.
Or the flip side of self-fulfilling prophecy is you could say it's going to work. And then guess what? You find data that it works because you were biased that it was going to work. So that guy is correct. The scientific method is to form a hypothesis and then to try to prove it wrong. If you try to prove, I've been in many labs in many industries, and I tell you, if you set out to prove something is real, you will find some sort of data that shows it's real.
Law of attraction.
Well, no. Because that's what you were looking for, and because you were biased, and because you chose to see what you wanted to see.
That's the law of attraction. What you think about, you bring about.
No, I'm saying where you see something is real when it's not really, because you're biased. Oh. You have to set out to disprove a hypothesis, not set out to prove it, because there's so much noise to be seen that if you're looking for noise, you're going to find it, and it's going to confirm, quote unquote, confirm your theory, because there's so much noise. If you zero in on one piece of data, yeah, you can convince yourself it's real when it's not. So you have to have a skeptical perspective. You have to try to disprove yourself to prove that you're right by trying as hard as you can to disprove yourself. That's the scientific method. And then when you fail to disprove yourself, that's when you're like, oh, maybe I was right. But you have to be willing to even try, or it's not going to happen.
Right.
And that's what I mean when I say if you want Star Trek, you better put your thinking cap on and start doing some math and inventing and trying some shit, or it's never going to happen, because Star Trek don't happen by itself. You got to put in effort.
If you want beam me up technology, you can start looking at Home Depot and find out what parts you need. Because, like, literally, I believe this technology is possible with parts and equipment that we have here on Earth already. And it probably has to do with high frequency stuff or something, because you see them disappearing in white light. But if it's possible, you should be looking in that direction. I saw there's a commentator on the YouTube stream right now called Beam Me Up, Mr. Scott. So if you really believe that beam me up technology is possible, I can tell you this much: it ain't anti-gravity. It's something different. If possible.
No, it's not everything is anti-gravity just because we like anti-gravity. No, there's other novel effects out there.
So what do you think gravity is?
not just one thing. Huh?
What do you think gravity is? What is gravity?
I don't want to say what I think gravity is because I ain't published yet. I got some patents I need to file. I ain't gonna say. I
What do
do
you
have
think?
an idea.
So, what do you
I think
think of
gravity
Mike
is.
McCulloch? His statement that gravity is just a blocking of information by horizons.
No, that's stupid. I've never heard that before, but it strikes me as extremely untrue and misguided. No. No.
Okay.
I do have a theory that I can sketch in a very, geometrically easily representable
I
way,
don't want
but
you to share your
it's not
theory. I'd
that's
rather
just
you
not
publish a
about
paper and
it.
on it and get it all formally out so you can get the credit for me. And I don't want to. If you have a theory and it's a good one, I'd like to see you publish a paper on it or something.
We've got data, but it's not published yet, right? So I would be pretty stupid to announce something before I
Don't.
publish it because then somebody else can go run and patent it, man.
That's what happened with YCBO here in Huntsville.
If I go talking prematurely, that's kind of a stupid thing to do.
With the superconductors.
Well, yeah, he's talking about. Well, yeah, that was his professor that stole it. You should be able to talk to your professor without them stealing shit, but that's not always true.
Here in Huntsville, Alabama, there was a student who invented the superconductor YCBO or yttrium
YBCO.
Yttrium barium copper oxide.
Yes.
And he spoke to his professor about it. He then ran out to the University of Texas, was it?
Yeah, it took a dean of the College of Science position and was filing a patent the next day. And the grad student is like, damn, I just told you this yesterday. You be taking a job and filing patents tomorrow. So yeah, the
This shit happens.
UH was locked up in court over it for like a decade, and then it was just costing too much money. They weren't going to win. They just abandoned it. But that's like a Huntsville lore story. Somewhere on the internet, his name is Jim Ashburn, the guy that invented YBCO and got scooped by his professor. There's somewhere online, if you Google Jim Ashburn YBCO, there's a recording of the story, which is really quite interesting. It's really quite an interesting story about how that played out politically with the IP. It's sort of a prescient example of how much academia sucks, to be honest. But
and how advanced propulsion scientists are a small community, and they all hate each other.
Yeah,
they're ripping off each other's ideas too. Like, this is kind of crazy. Because they were doing a lot of experiments to find these high temperature superconductors, and then they found one in these ceramics that they never, different type of material that they never would have imagined, would be a complete insulator. These ceramics are complete insulators, so it was just a complete surprise that they became superconductive.
Well, with the YBCO discovery, it was kind of interesting how he did it. He literally was just like, if I was trying to optimize superconductivity based off of my, theoretical understanding of how superconductivity works, what should the crystal matrix look like? And if I want a crystal matrix with a certain geometry that I think will be, helpful for superconductivity, what element should I use to make that crystal matrix that I'm thinking about? And he pretty much just was like sketched on a piece of paper, I think this is what it might look like. And then he whipped it up in the lab and it worked. It was a hypothesis-driven thing, like we were talking about earlier. I think superconductivity works this way. I think that would require this type of crystal matrix. I think that would require this type of atomic distribution. He made it, it worked, that's how it was invented. So understanding principles of how things work is kind of important to creating new things. If you can say, I know X, I know Y, I know Z, how do I now assemble them into something real that's new? Understanding how things work is kind of important. And then you postulate, well, if this is true, maybe then I can do this. That's how you innovate, one step at a time.
So, what else was I wanted to ask you? Because I'm starting to get tired and
It's
here
okay.
it's getting to be. It's almost 1 a.m. So I've been waking up at 4 a.m. every morning, and like I was tired at 9. I was like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna stay up and do this friggin' thing. And
Yeah.
I'm glad
Thank
I
you
did.
much for pushing through, Jeremy. I know you were tired. Did you end up getting that Red Bull?
I don't drink caffeine. I can't do caffeine. But I've been drinking.
Um,
I've been drinking shots of Captain Morgan Private Stock, so that's been kind of keeping me
yeah.
going. But
Sometimes you need.
I need to
I was
crack.
caffeine for a decade, man, and boy, did that ever suck. It was not by choice.
Oh,
I was off caffeine for like 8 or 9 or 10 years.
I don't need caffeine. I'm just naturally ADHD, and like super really high strung, and and I wake up
Yeah.
I go to. I've been waking up every morning at 4 a.m. and just like I'm tired at like 9 right after I put my kids to bed, and I'm just like up first thing in the morning every day, like no matter what. I don't know. I'm in a weird sleep cycle right now, and
Yeah.
I'm like this is
I
like late
have
at night
sleep
for me.
all the time. Yeah, I have sleep apnea. I'm just tired all the freaking time because I'm in REM all night. I never get deep sleep because
I
I'm
get
not,
tired too, but like I'm always like I can't sleep more than like 5 or 6 hours, and then like all I need is 5 or 6 hours, then I'm up and I cannot go back to sleep. But then like I'll crash out at like the afternoon time. I'll start feeling tired a little bit, if I don't keep going.
Yeah.
Easily fall out if I go to sleep right out.
I could sleep infinitely and still be extremely exhausted because with sleep apnea, you ain't getting deep sleep, and that's what's restorative, man. If
Yeah.
you're in a REM fever dream, 100% of the time that you're asleep, you're probably going to be tired when you wake up. But yeah.
But yeah, I thought this was interesting. I wish I wanted to go more into like just the where the technology is going in the next 10 to 20 years and stuff, but we kind of got into like where it's come from and the whole Nazi Bell thing and everything. Maybe I'll change the name of the title of the video now that we've wrapped up and kind of
You should probably edit out the first couple of minutes while we were getting ready. We expected there to be a little bit of a preamble before we went live, so getting the
Oh
audio.
no, I kept you I kept you off the screen, and I was just going over other things while you guys were getting set up anyway. So it's fine.
Okay, cool.
I think it's fine, or people can.
Whatever.
So.
Okay.
All right.
Nice chat.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice chat.
Thanks for joining us, and we're gonna talk more about.
Okay.
I want to get more into like another time when we can get into it. I want to go get into more of the scientists down in Huntsville and some of the NASA replications, the Advanced Concepts Research Lab, and some of the just the scientists and the research that's gone on there, and the kind of history of it all. Just some interesting facts about how it's been. So I want to know more. I want to know more about how it gets suppressed and how the actual mechanics of how this all works is kind of like I'm curious about that.
Complicated.
Right.
It involves a lot of drugs, sex, and anti-gravity.
Yeah, my memoir is going to be Sex, Lies, and Antigravity is going to be the title of my fucking memoir.
But also roofies and
sometimes you get roofied, man.
Sometimes directed energy beams, drones.
Don't go too crazy on them.
Okay. There's a bottom to this rabbit hole.
I'm not sure there is a bottom. I've been falling for a while. I haven't found the bottom yet. All I know is that there's a rabbit hole and that it's deep. I don't know where the bottom is. I ain't hit it yet.
Well, I always point this about when everyone talks about rabbit holes or a rabbit hole, that a rabbit's burrow is really it hides the real burrow, and then it digs a bunch of rabbit holes for fake burrows to fool the predator into where it really is and where its real burrow is. That's how it hides the real burrow. It builds a whole bunch of rabbit holes that don't lead anywhere, that are just fake burrows. That's an important thing to understand about rabbit holes is that most of them don't lead anywhere.
That's insightful.
But I think you need to go down a couple different holes in order to figure out where the burrow really is. And it might be a combination of different holes that give you a little bit of piece to the puzzle to actually what it takes to make humanity into a spacefaring race.
Well, you certainly have to be willing to ask a question, or you're freaking never gonna get the answer.
And you can't go down all the rabbit holes and just think all of them are the real.
You can. It's fun, but it takes a lot.
It takes a lot.
And money.
And money, and you bang your head against the wall a lot. Yeah.
There was a guy here in Huntsville who had like a couple $1 million and started investing in anti-gravity crazy ideas, and guess what?
Oh, don't talk about that. No.
He doesn't have a couple $1 million anymore.
Don't talk about that.
I know a couple people like that they were like right from the beginning, and I was sitting there telling them, like, these free energy machines don't work because you're not understanding these concepts about, second law of thermodynamics or Lenz's law or all these really, all these things that he was coming up with, or seeing these ideas for building free energy. And I'm like, no, they won't work because of this, this, and this. And then he eventually kicked me off his team because he said I was working for the CIA to lead him off the trail. But then I just was like, all right, you're on your own. And then he pissed through like a...
You're working for the CIA.
Yeah,
dude, I've had so many interactions where I'm like... I've had so many interactions where, like, somebody looks at you and they're like, you're spying on me. And you look at them and you say, actually, it's much more likely that you're spying on me. And you're just, it's like checkmate. Like, who's spying on who? Probably neither of us. It's like, you're spying on me. No, you're spying on me. Checkmate. It's just like a moot point. It's moot.
We're all agents. We're all working for the government. That's the thing, too. All right, I was finding out because I was sitting here like, I'm all mad at, like, I was all like, kind of not mad, but I was upset with like Richard Dolan and Jeremy Corbell for that anonymous video and a couple of the other things that they put out, which and I started this whole discussion with us where we're thinking, like, what if these guys are all disinformation? They're working for disinformation. They're all working for like the cabal and all this stuff. And it's like, it's true because they're probably sitting there thinking the same thing about us, and they're probably talking that and saying the same thing about us. Like, these guys are like, you know what I mean? Like, we're both like trying to work for the thing, but we're on different pages and working towards different goals. But we're like fighting each other and accusing each other of being agents because we're not on the same page about certain things.
People be paranoid. People be paranoid, and it's it comes with the territory. But also, they could be a disinformation agent and they don't even know it because they're being fed bullshit.
Yeah, well, that's another thing. A lot of the disinformation agents, right, because that's the difference between an agent and a case officer. And if you read Philip Agee's book on Inside the Company, talking about the CIA, he says that agents don't even know they're agents most of the time. So the CIA doesn't employ agents; they employ case officers, and the case officers operate.
I think the
agents.
term would be asset. Assets often do not know that they're assets.
Right.
Agents probably know that they're agents, but assets often don't know that they are. I say this like I know, but really it's like there's so much manipulation and smoke screen, and
that's a good book, Philip Agee.
Something that you're being lied to. It's really murky, honestly. It's extremely murky, and it's kind of intentionally murky.
I know. I like that. Yeah, it is cool. The dark arts is is like the training ground that they send all the spies at spycraft school. How they train spies is this whole series called the dark arts, and it talks about how like all the different ways that con artists have worked to manipulate the human psyche, and all the different ways that humans can be susceptible to manipulation. And it's a real interesting thing when you start digging into all that. But Philip Agee, Inside the Company, talks about a lot of that stuff. The first chapter is just probably the best in the book. The rest of it goes into sort of details about how he actually worked in some of the operations that he was engaged in. But the first chapter really goes into just the details on the training the CIA agent gets and some of the basics of spycraft. And it's really mind-opening to kind of understand that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, authentic, honest people are very often easy to manipulate because they assume everyone's honest like them. And so, like, yeah, you can be talking to someone that really believes what they're saying and they're an honest person, but they've been lied to and it's kind of not their fault. So you really have to take everything with a grain of salt. You have to use your own mind.
Yeah, you really
You
have to
know, don't
think it. It's
something
really
just
about.
because someone told you. Use your own mind. Your mind is a powerful thing. Use it and make your own decisions. Make your own discernments. Because people be lying to you.
All
Use
the
your
time.
mind. Make your own
You'd be lying to
discernments.
yourself. We'd be lying to ourselves all the time too, man.
Unfortunately.
All right. Well, I'm Jace Ventura. Oh, I thought it was Jesse Ventura. Jesse Ventura is running for president, I guess, as an independent. I'm gonna vote for
Is
him.
he?
He's the only person I've seen. So the only candidate I've seen so far where I'm like, yeah, I would actually vote for them. Biden, no. Trump, no. But I would.
Jesse Ventura. On what ticket?
Independent. I think he's running on an independent ticket. I'm not sure. Like what.
I like Jesse Ventura.
Yeah,
He'd make a good president, man. He would definitely tear shit up. You know, it'd be good.
I don't know. I
Still
vote for
fine.
the tipping point. Every presidential election I've ever voted in, I've voted for the tipping point, which is the Republican candidate fucking sucks. The Democratic candidate fucking sucks.
Yeah.
No one is ever going to vote for a third party next cycle if some people don't vote for them this cycle. You know, you got to build up momentum.
Mm-hmm.
So I vote for the tipping point, which is I freaking know the libertarians aren't going to win this round. I vote for them anyway because I want them to win 5 rounds from now. And you got to plant that seed and vote for it ahead of time or it ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
If you don't make it happen, it's not going
Here's to that.
And then the biggest lie is that you're wasting your vote. Yeah, your vote's wasted if you're voting for a candidate you don't want. That's when your vote's wasted.
Exactly.
Being in Alabama, the Republican's going to win. It doesn't matter who I vote for. The Republican's going to win. I might as well vote for the tipping point. Invest in the future. It's like we're always fucked this cycle. Just invest in the future. Maybe it'll be better next time. But yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel that the core problem in politics is voting districts, and if we got rid of voting districts, we'd have a multi-party system similar to what they have in Israel, where you have like 20 to 30 choices and like 10 of them actually make it into government, and you get real choices, you get real options, and you get really smart decision making.
It's
not
it's a scam. The DNC's been rigged the past 2 elections, and it really needs to be dissolved altogether because it's just pathetic that they've put like these pure fucking status quo establishment candidates in our path. Like they do not want us to break out of the same people that have been in control for how fucking long, forever. Okay, the same people are in control, and they do not want us to break out of that. They desperately want to keep us under the control of the same people who've been controlling everything since forever, and that needs to stop. And that needs to break apart. And I think in the next 10 to 20 years, the revelation is going to come. Like people are really going to realize this and more. We need more than 2 parties, and we need. Yeah, we need more control over the media because the media is just it's completely destroyed, you know. And then the internet too. It's and Facebook. Oh, yeah, we're in really big trouble. We're in really big trouble, man. It's just crazy everything that's going on. I don't know what the future holds, but we need to focus on getting off this planet and getting to space and getting these technologies out of the hands of these freaking psychopathic tyrants that have been controlling and enslaving humanity for eons. So since the beginning of time on this country.
The fuck off the planet. That's maybe a good sentiment to end it on. Let's get the fuck off the planet.
Yeah.
Sooner rather than later, please. I'm working on it. Work on it with me because it ain't gonna happen by accident.
Well, that's why I'm gonna put this. Start working on this hoverboard site this weekend and put more people on the team together, and anyone else who wants to join up and get on. I'm looking for more guests and more knowledgeable people who are, you know, have information and stuff to add. So thank you guys for joining us tonight and sharing, you know, what you have to share with us, some interesting insights on everything going on down there in top secret Huntsville.
I'm just talking about shit I've been exposed to. It doesn't mean I'm right about everything, and it don't mean I know everything.
There's multiple paradigm shifts that need to happen.
That is true.
And I think Sky, with his engines that he's running on, and planning on going on to thorium reactors after, is going to be a key to the puzzle as well.
I love that. I love that we're getting these energy people and also, transportation people, like people trying to solve the biggest problems of our generation, the biggest problems facing our future. So that's kind of
got more work to do.
got a lot of work to do.
It's okay though. We're ready for it.
That's right.
Let's get down to it.
Do it. Multiple people got to do it.
All right. Anything else you want to leave leave people off on before I say goodnight?
My Twitter is Amy C. Eskridge, ESKRIDGE. Amy C. Eskridge on Twitter. My website is institutehsv.com. HSV short for Huntsville. That's all I got to say.
And my lab is on falconspace.org. It'll take you straight to the YouTube channel, and you can see some of the experiments I've tried so far.
Cool.
Definitely. All right. Thanks guys so much, and we'll talk soon. And welcome aboard and the team. So thanks.
We're on the team. Okay. We'll talk to you later.
Guys. All right. Bye.